really quick, because we're gonna get into this this debate with Tyler Bluntman and Victoria Hammett on abortion. I just want to show you guys one thing. Patreon. I revamped my Patreon. It is now basically one tier. This is just a veterans tier. It's the same thing. It's just if you want to pay more. I didn't want to remove it because people are still on it. I told them to transition. Basically, for $5 a month on my Patreon, you get access to, well, basically you get a direct access to DMing me. You have the ability to look at like forbidden TikToks that I don't post on TikTok. I have a blog on there, workout blog. I chat with you guys. $5 a month, and then you get a shout out at the end of every YouTube video that I put on YouTube. And you guys know that I put like fucking at least three videos up a day for the most part. $5 a month, great way to support me. I get most of the money of here as opposed to Twitch, where I only get about half. Just letting you know, if you had to pick between one and two, this might be the better option. All right, guys. Just wanted to let you know that. Patreon.com/PapaGut. There's a Patreon link in the chat. I spelled it right. Good for me. So let's get into this debate. Let's have a lot of smooches and some fun. I have bit alerts on pause. Let's get into this here. All right. Let's make sure it's loud enough for us to talk about. Bow, 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 bow.
Oh, I'm now live. Okay, is my phone gonna balance now? That's awesome.
I don't really care about any of this. Let's get to right here. Okay, so really quick, I kind of want to preface this. Such big words from Papa Gut. I think that when it comes to abortion, everybody likes to talk about it mostly like progressives when they talk about abortion. They like to talk about it in a way that kind of denies the kind of shitty aspects of it. Because abortion is kind of shitty, honestly, when it really comes down to it. Abortion it's tough. You can't really look like a good guy in abortion. You can make you just can't look like the good guy in abortion. A lot of times progressives like to kind of wrap this narrative that it's not fucked up to get an abortion. It is, man. It actually is pretty messed up. But I still am pro-choice. Because I look at it more from a societal perspective. I think that both worldviews, whether you would have abortion legal or not, can work. I prefer the one that's pro-choice. And generally speaking, what I would say is that if you're pro-choice, you're somebody that would understand that in our current society, where we have a lot of programs that help people stay intact, regardless of what kind of disability they may have, whether it's physical or mental disability, there needs to be some form of population control. And I would prefer people to be able to choose whether they want to or not, or do or don't want to have a kid. There's obviously much deeper than that. But if we birthed even 10% of the babies that would be aborted every year, which is roughly 900,000 in the United States, we would go bankrupt as a society. On the flip side, we could make abortion illegal, and we can make that work if we really wanted to, but we'd have to start cutting welfare programs, or it would bankrupt us. It's a harsher worldview, I think. I don't really subscribe to that worldview, but I would say that it probably could work if we really gave the opportunity for it to work, but I don't really think it's the best way to go again. I like the idea of an empathetic society. I think that empathy overall in society is a net positive for us. And at the end of the day, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, someone's going to suffer. So that's kind of what it comes down to, honestly. So yeah, let's have this little fun time debate here.
Yeah. Oh, Tyler's here, y'all.
Tyler's here, y'all.
Hey. So the debate's starting, so I'll talk to you in a bit. Hey, Tyler, thank you so much for being here.
Wow,
I know
great
that
audio quality
right off
the bat.
For you, and I know that this wasn't your ideal platform
what
to
happened?
do this on, so I want to thank you for being here.
Why did her?
Yeah, just to be clear, I appreciate it. Just to be clear,
instantly.
I don't know if it's your Wi-Fi, if you're running off of your data, but you are super choppy on my side, and you kind of cut in and out.
Thank God, Tyler.
Really?
You're already,
you know what?
You're already saving us, buddy.
I'm gonna disconnect.
Let's see what I'm gonna try to change this.
Okay, so I have my
there we go.
computer on hotspot because my wife. Am I better now?
It got better.
Yes, you are.
I'm not telling them it got better. I'm telling my fans.
My Wi-Fi is out in my apartment, so
I won't have access to all my sources for right now, but I can always
debates.
text them to you.
It's okay. We can't even really share like live really anyway.
Tyler's here. Yeah, maybe I'll pull you in
Instagram.
after.
But I mean, anybody that wants like the sources or whatever, we can always DM them. After.
I hate debates, bro.
Yeah, okay,
they're so yucky.
So,
well, let's do this.
Yeah.
So do you want me to just state my stance,
pause it.
or you want to state your stance? What do you want to do?
You can go first.
You know.
Okay. I mean, it's really very simple for me. I believe.
I think that the best stance when it comes to abortion is that, you know, it's a very unfortunate thing because, like, I really don't support anything that gives women more rights, but I also like killing babies, so it's very conflicting. That's not my joke. I know I stole that. I'm sorry, guys.
That abortion should not be legal. I believe that at conception you have, well, it's not even a belief. It's just what happens. At conception, 2 body parts form. You got the sperm, you got the egg, and they combine to form a new human.
Yo, Tyler just said 2 body parts form at conception. You're right about that, my man. High five! Woo!
Embryonic organism.
It's a pee-pee and a
who
giny.
is growing and developing into adulthood. So, and I believe that they have the right to life. Now, what is your stance exactly?
Now, for my stance,
hate
isn't
kids.
even necessary.
Oh no, she's cutting out.
It's just stating that form of human life is not as valuable as living, breathing humans. So I think that it's inaccurate to equate an baby. So
I'd like to say that, like, you know, I'm pro-choice, but like I agree like with the idea that like it's fucked up to kill a kid. Like I totally understand where Tyler's coming from. Like this is abortion. Like if you're a pro-choicer that like doesn't give a shit about the conservative argument that that's not a human life yet, but it is a potential human life, I think you're kind of a shitty person.
You're cutting out.
God damn it.
I can see you, and like most of the time I can hear what you're saying, but I'd say like, I don't know, 10 or 15% of what you say is like cutting out.
True.
Okay.
True.
Is it better now?
I wish you guys put this on YouTube.
Let me.
I mean,
so that I could
far.
fast. I could increase the speed of it.
It's a huge problem. I'm going to start the live over and start from scratch and see what happens.
It's cool. I can work with 85%. If for some reason I can't understand you, I'll just let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I think as a society, we deprive multicellular organisms of life all the time, right? We kill plants without a second thought, and most of us are fine with killing certain animals, unless you're vegetarian or vegan, of course.
We don't eat babies.
I think we
that's easily contested.
Beings of moral consideration because we're capable of consciousness, self-awareness, subjective experience, and desire. None of these defining attributes are present in
Victoria. Real quick, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but before you continue that, I just wanted to get like when, because I think you told me in a DM that, is it at first trimester and then you believe after that it should be illegal? Can you tell me that first?
Yeah, so for purposes of the debate, I'm going to be advocating for legal first-term abortions. Personally, I think that a reasonable cutoff would be that like 18 weeks.
Shit.
Sorry, am I good? Am I cutting out at all?
No, yeah. I just didn't take a pen and paper, so I'm just going to type what you're saying on my computer.
So yeah, for context, like I'm more of a first trimester guy. Like socially, I understand that like law wise, that like I get it. I get late term abortion specifically when it comes to, you know, the harm of the mother or the child's life. I would say that like I understand second of terms, even if I'm uncomfortable with it, because you don't start developing pain until you're like 27 weeks. I think I get that. Just throwing that out there.
Okay, yeah. So I think that for the purposes of this debate,
I'm hoping at some point though,
legal first-term abortion.
That these two kiss.
But my personal
wish we could put them on the side.
Are that like 18 weeks is the reasonable cutoff, just based on cognitive development at that time. But continuing what I was saying is that fetuses within that first trimester don't have consciousness, self-awareness, subjective experience, or desire. And we know this because of their lack of cognitive development in pertaining to certain brain structures.
I don't really like the dehumanizing of fetus.
And it's for this reason that fetuses at this stage of development, if we deprive them of life, that is not murder as much as like, you know, killing a plant or an animal is murder, right? I don't think defining that as murder is appropriate.
By that.
So that's why.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't actually say murder. I just said it's the unjust killing, right?
Okay, right. But I don't believe that it is an unjust killing.
Okay.
I agree with that. I don't think it's an unjust killing.
All right, so let's go ahead and kind of unpack these things. All right, so are you basing it around... Okay, so explain to me why you said first term at 12 weeks, but then you're saying... I think the first term is the end of 12 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but then you're saying, well, I actually believe it's 18 weeks. So why is that?
Well, okay. So again, like I said, for purposes of this debate, I'm just going to be advocating for legal first-term abortion because or first trimester, because that's typically
Because there has no consciousness, it has no like sentience and so on and so forth, right?
I'm going to be advocating for first trimester because that's typically the time periods that we use in legal jargon, right? We typically do outlaw, with the exception of like the heartbeat bill.
Yeah.
By trimester. And as you'll see further into my argument, while most cognitive development begins, like most significant cognitive development really starts beginning at 18 weeks, there is some variation. You know, the hypothalamus starts developing at the 15-week mark.
But it doesn't actually start really. It starts developing at 18 weeks. But like actual, if you want to talk about like actual cognitive ability to where you're talking about things like sentience, that's between 24 and 28 weeks.
Yeah. Consciousness doesn't develop, according to the Pediatric Research Journal, consciousness doesn't begin until 26 weeks. But I think just like significant brain structure development doesn't really occur until that 15-week mark. And because the second trimester is a bit dodgy in that sense, where there are different things forming at different times, I think it's safe to say that first trimester abortions
really going
should
in
be
on
universally legal.
First point
because really at that point, at the end of the first trimester, neurons are forming, but the first synapse hasn't even begun to form, right? So there's
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
I think it's more fun to kill a conscious
so I know how to
like
respond to what you're saying. Are you saying at the end, is it because the 12 weeks because it does not have sentience? Is that what you're saying? Is that what your claim is?
Right. My claim is at the end of that first term, it doesn't have consciousness ability. Well, you know the spiel I gave you. It cannot have subjective experiences.
Yeah, that's sentience.
Right. So. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, and then we also agree that sentience, I mean, you're talking about sentience being at like 26 weeks, correct?
No. Like I said, these
when do you really get
developing
sentience,
about,
though?
15 weeks is the very, very start of it. So that's
Well,
why
you said first of all, you said 18 weeks, not 15 weeks. Second,
I told you the hypothalamus starts developing.
Okay.
Able
I
to
understand
perceive
that.
or feel things.
Get
Okay.
into the debate.
That's pretty heavy.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm asking you is that, or what I brought up earlier.
Tyler, you're bullying this girl already.
Is that it may start developing at that
dick.
time, but that does not equate to sentience. Sentience
this is why
does
you
not
can't
occur until 24 to 28.
This is why you can't have a
you
can't have a
denying
debate
that, or
with
do you agree?
Tyler Bluntman because
I think that it's a little bit unclear as to when sentience truly begins, because the hypothalamus, for example, is integral to the development of experiences. And because that begins developing at 15 weeks, and because we can see subjective experiences being had in the womb at 18 weeks, in terms of like the fetus being able to hear its mother's voice and prefer its mother's voice over the voices of others, because we're able to observe those things at 18 weeks, I think it's unfair. This is why I don't want to use the word sentience, because I think it's too much of an umbrella term. I would like to really focus on the components that make up sentience and determine when those things start. But regardless, Tyler, I mean, I'm just here to advocate for legal first-term abortion. So I would prefer if you focus your argument as to why first-term abortion, your stance is that no abortion should be legal at all, right?
Right.
And now, since you put,
I wonder if that's
parameters on my
true
argument,
even for
to know,
like
do you
rape
believe that
incest or
abortion should be
value.
legal in cases of rape? Also,
Okay.
sorry, y'all, trigger warning. If rape is triggering to you, feel free to leave.
Trigger warning. Got to warn before you trigger me.
Why would I think that it should be legal in terms of rape?
Just because I think
fucked up for a mom to have to carry that kid
when someone called
or woman.
you pro-birth instead of pro-life, and you pointed out that you're pro-life because you're against the termination of pregnancies, not necessarily because you're pro the preservation of life, right?
Here,
because
right.
talking about how
that's like a nuanced point,
having
like a small point to
die
talk
as a
about,
result of
you
that
know?
abortion, which I think your stance is a little bit more personal about account. You know, you invited, I've even seen you talk about this in a video, you invited that baby into your womb, and so for that reason you think that baby should stay there. And I'm curious as to what your stance on rape would be, because in that instance a woman is not inviting a baby into her womb. She could just be walking down the street and get impregnated. Do you think abortion should be legal in that case?
Sure. So for one, I would say for one, if you're trying to use like the 1% of abortions to justify the 99%, I would say that's completely disingenuous. So that's the first thing.
That's true. It's like one. I think the statistic is like 1.3% of abortions. No, I think it's less than that actually. 1.3% are third trimester. I have to look that up. But,
So
but
the
that's
first
rape,
thing I would
incest,
say.
and
The next thing that I would say is that it doesn't even
value
really
to
matter
harm
because
the
that
mom's
human
life.
embryonic organism is not is innocent and didn't actually, it's not there maliciously, right? So whether think of it this way: if a child, if an infant, right, wanders into your home, that is your home, right? You can evict that human being, right? But you cannot terminate that human being. You can't kill that child in any state, right?
Right, but also when we're talking about
That's a fair
medical
point.
abortion, like the abortion pill, I would argue that it's not killing so much.
Oh, I
as
guess it is a whole
just
1%.
the eviction,
That's a lot, I feel
because
like,
whenever
for
you
a
take
rape case.
like an abortion pill, for example, all that does is thin the uterine lining and expel the
Wow.
embryo from your uterus, similar
Higher than
to
I
what
thought.
happens naturally half the time an embryo is conceived anyway. So that's
but you're saying expel, right? So I mean, it's still the termination of that human being, right? Or that human embryonic organism, right?
To expel more directly correlates to eviction, because at that point you're not killing, you're not doing anything to the embryo, nothing has touched the embryo, you are just not letting the embryo attach to that uterine lining, which is necessary for development, and so then that embryo is expelled from your uterus. So in that case, I would say that, like, in that instance, at the very least, it is more equivalent to evicting a human being from your home as opposed to just killing them if they're in your home.
Well, it wouldn't be the same thing. That's completely falsely equivalent, because if you are evicting a human child from your home, right, and someone else comes and picks up that child, or whatever you want to say in the circumstance, that human child is not dead, right?
Well, I think
we didn't terminate their life, right? Correct?
Getting a derailed with the analogies here. But I mean, in theory, when you do take,
that's because
I'm gonna pause it for a second. I don't know why. So debate wise, Tyler is winning the debate. But like, I don't know why she's even allowing this to happen. It's really not very. It's not a really good analogy when we're talking about the difference between a person raping a woman versus a baby walking into your house and your ability to kill that baby. It's very, very different. We're talking about abortion. I don't know why she's even going on with this.
It's just,
I guess well, that's ironic, because I imagine this would this be considered falsely analogous? The difference between somebody raping somebody and the difference between a baby walking into the house, you know?
So.
One who brought up the child wanders into your home, which I think is falsely analogous.
There you go.
I mean, how is it falsely analogous?
In the case of an abortion pill, you're just deprived.
Because nobody raped the child into your house. That's why it would be falsely analogous.
Depriving that embryo of what it needs to survive, similar to if you would kick a child out of your home, if it ran into your home. You're depriving them of what they need to survive.
But yeah, no, that's another thing too. If you're gonna say like, bye, leave the house, child. I mean, I don't know. I guess his argument is that you should put it up for adoption. Would that be how it works? But it's not like a fully formed baby is getting pushed into your womb. Like in this argument, Tyler's like, here's the house, here's the girl, right? Here's the house, here's the girl, right? Here's the baby going, the guy raping a baby into the girl. Here's a full-formed baby going into a house. So I would imagine that the only way that this would be like an actual analogy is if somebody took a human baby that's already been birthed and shoved it into a woman's vagina, right? That's what you'd have to do. But yeah, no, it's just like a very bizarre scenario.
But you're not directly killing it. But that, I think that's still just like, that is so open to interpretation.
Imagine doing that, though.
And that's why I want to stay away from analogies.
Imagine just shoving a whole baby into.
But I just wanted to understand the parameters of your.
You know, off topic. This is just how I do myself. I remember watching like some story about how like a woman had like the greatest orgasm of her entire life when she natural birthed her baby into like a bathtub or whatever, and it just reminds me of that. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine having a baby like that and having the best orgasm of your life? It's crazy. I just need to like throw this out there really quick. Okay, just think about this. A lot of you guys don't understand, but like as a man, usually a father will show, like, they'll pee in front of their kid while they're taking a bath to just show when you're a young boy that your dad has a bigger wiggler than you. And the purpose of that is so that you're always like self-conscious. You always think your dad is a bigger peepee. It works though, because it makes you feel like they're more dominant to you. But you could never pull that trick if your son gave your wife the greatest orgasm of her entire life. It's crazy, right?
So
yeah. Okay. Can I respond?
The more you know.
Can I respond?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so for one, we're definitely not going to stay away from analogies just because you don't like them. But second, I want to really go into like because the last thing, if we can kind of pick up like where we left off on TikTok, that would be dope.
Listen, guys,
Right.
I'm
So the
just
last
telling
thing
you
that I did for anyone who didn't
what
see it,
works.
and I'll just re-bring it up for you, and I got my notes here of what you said.
Good demo.
Okay, so in the video response that we were talking about the hypothetical, right? It was the philosophical question of if you were forced to save a 5-year-old child, like you're burning building, you can only choose one or the other, right? So you can only choose between the 5-year-old child or you can choose the 5 human embryos, right? And that was a video that Lee made that I responded to.
Let's
And,
use
I said, obviously it's a 5-year-old child. And I gave reasoning for that. And one of the reasonings that I gave to it was just that it was the same thing that if you forced me to choose between a 5-year-old healthy child and a 90-year-old woman on her deathbed, and that it is not immoral to save a human being based on their stage of life if you are forced with that decision. Now, your response to that was you said that it was flawed, and then this was your reasoning. You said, I don't save the 90-year-old, and I might cry, her family might cry, and host a funeral and mourn her death. And then you asked if I would cry over embryos of the, if embryos would die or if the mother would cry. You then said, this is the second part, so I'll get into the second part in a second. So based on what I just said, or based on your refutation, why did you think that that was applicable?
Well, I was just going off of your analogy. And if, I could get into some of the substance of what I have here in my notes, I'll explain why I believe this. But we do not value embryos the same way we value human life, the same way we value a baby. So I was kind of using your analogy to demonstrate that in a real life sense, right? So, a child and an old woman are in a burning building. You have to save one. The family's going to host a funeral for the grandma, even if she was on her deathbed, right?
Well, I'd save the baby, right?
Burn up, and no one's really upset by that. And we have evidence because when we're talking about IVF, several IVF embryos are discarded every year. Pro-lifers don't seem to be upset about that. 50% of every embryo conceived is now passed through the uterus, and be upset about that. I just find it a little bit strange that pro-lifers are so focused on abortion when there are so many other ways that embryos are being discarded. So if you truly believe life begins right at conception, not a second later, I'm confused why your energy isn't directed towards those other aspects of like killing babies,
Right. So everything that you just said didn't answer the question that I asked you.
Could you repeat the question that you asked me?
Yes. So I'm asking you why you think that using that by saying that if someone doesn't cry or if someone doesn't mourn or if someone doesn't host a funeral, what that has to do with anything.
Right. Well, as I said,
that's a complete red herring, because that would have nothing to do with someone dying, right? So like if my brother died and I didn't mourn or I didn't care, does it mean that he didn't die? Like nothing that you said has.
What are we talking about right now? Where did we go? We went from like the idea of like saving 5 embryos or a human baby, and all of a sudden to this weird response of whether you would mourn a death or not. It's a little bit bizarre.
Nothing to do. It was a red herring fallacy. So
I think that at the end of the day, we've all just acknowledged that like a baby is more subjectively more important than embryos, right? Or a fetus.
What I'm saying is that your argument was completely fallacious and was not applicable.
Okay.
So can you explain to me how it was?
Yes,
I don't quite understand her
argument. It's going to
though.
go one way. I understand that you need to double down and say, oh, well, people would always be sad over a real human being dying, and no one's sad over an embryo, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm showing
That's
you
what
how
I would
used
say.
your
Yeah, it's an
analogy
argument.
to just demonstrate how typically in society we value human over embryos. Would you care to know why I think that
Maybe unless you wanted to eat the embryo. I don't
No,
know.
but why does that matter? Why does someone crying or mourning, why does that matter?
It doesn't necessarily,
because it shows like society, like how much value society generally places on the embryos versus fetuses, or rather embryos versus like a baby, or a baby versus an adult. It's an easy answer.
I was just using it to demonstrate how.
So then why would you say it?
I'm telling you why I said it. I was using it to demonstrate how ridiculous your analogy was. Because at the end of the day, you know that you don't value embryos the same as a human being. You yourself, you would save a child in a burning building before you would save embryos.
Sure.
And so I was pointing out to you.
I'd say both. You put the child in your arms, the embryos in your mouth.
Reason why we value human beings over embryos and over fetuses. And if you would like me to get into the
That's not my argument, though. So my argument has nothing to do with value. So
Okay.
you would be arguing that against somebody else who may have had that stance. That's not my argument.
Okay.
So
Why do you?
so that's like a false dichotomy anyway. You're arguing against
Well,
something.
I would argue
it's a non sequitur. You're
whatever. I would just argue what's your opinion on it then? Because it's
arguing
still a good
against like
point.
something a position I never
It's a good point from her. What it establishes is that this isn't a factor for you. So then we have to find out what's your factor.
made.
If emotion isn't a factor when it comes to abortion, I'm curious what your perspective is.
Okay, so your position that all abortion should be illegal, and to be clear, it's not. It has nothing to do with the value of life, nor does it have to do with the preservation of life. So I'm confused why you think abortion should be illegal, unless you just feel like telling people what to do.
Right. So the value of human life, when you say like the value of life, that's 100% like subjective to you and I, right? Okay. So like say for instance, if there were 100 men and women, that, like same scenario. So like I can save 100 men and women, or I could save my child, I'm saving, right? If there were 1,000 men and women, I would still save my child.
Sure.
Right. So
that's fair.
We each place,
I would probably do that. Too.
I don't know, our own subjective value based on our own experiences and our own emotional attachment. Would you agree?
Yeah, and at the point of
Okay.
But from a sweeping societal generalization, majority of people would rather save a baby over a fetus or an embryo, even like regardless of whether you're pro-life or pro-choice.
I'm going to finish though.
Sorry, I didn't.
You're getting
But
very
you agree,
specific
right?
with this argument.
Yeah, sure. We all
Okay, absolutely. Okay, cool.
different amounts of value on different forms of life.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so we have those personal, I don't know, just subjective definitions of value, right? But that has nothing to do with my argument. It doesn't matter if I quote unquote value that thing more or less. What I'm saying is that because that is like an embryonic human organism, and because it is just in a different developmental stage, that it deserves or has the right to life. That's what I'm saying. Now, in that scenario, when we're talking about burning,
that's fair, but we already understand that. We're looking for the basis of that claim. We still haven't gotten to it. You've been dismissing other arguments, but what's the basis of that claim then? Because if you have absolutely no emotional attachment to it, then what's the basis for you being pro-choice? So far, you have like no reason for being pro-life other than just because. Like you're just dismissing arguments that are reasonable.
abilities and shit like that. That is, it's also falsely analogous. It just in and of itself, just because you're talking about you're being forced with that decision. You have to choose one or the other. In this, we don't have to choose one or the the 99% of the time, right?
Okay.
Sure.
So as I'm understanding,
does that make sense or no?
Right?
no.
I don't think you ever.
Okay.
Is that there's like
You know,
no
as a DM,
real world scenario where you're like, I gotta save 1,000 people or I'm gonna kill my baby. You know what I mean? Like there's zero worldview. It's just to demonstrate, you know, our value from a societal perspective.
You're cutting out. You're cutting out more.
Maybe I'll wait a second. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I mean, you constantly cut out, but you were just cutting out more and more, and I couldn't hear you.
Okay. So where was I? Okay. So, and this is why I DM'd you that discussing the morality of abortion is a bit difficult because it is so highly subjective. But as I understand,
Most things in life are subjective.
You know, it doesn't matter how much value is placed on this human organism. If it is an organism with human DNA, like that has the potential for life,
Is that his
it
argument?
should be saved, right? It should
No.
not.
What the hell? What's your fucking argument then?
Because, well, just based on how you frame that. Because just based on how you frame that
Come
could be
on,
applied
Tyler.
to
This
like,
is a very
somatic cells,
this
right?
is a very
like
dishonest
like
conversation
a skin
here.
cell or a hair cell or something like that, right? But those aren't embryonic organisms, right? Those are somatic cells.
You're like my girlfriend when I'm like, hey, what do you want for dinner? And then I propose a bunch of options. She's like, no, but you never give us the what do you want for dinner, Tyler? Tell us what you want for dinner here, bud. Tell us why you want your pro choice life.
Excuse me, an embryonic organism. I was smoking weed before. I'm sorry. So
you're good at debating.
You can probably tell by my hat. So anyway, just a little bit. I typically don't smoke too much when I go into debates, but I had just a little bit. There's some shit going on in my family. But anyway, so
But I did.
yeah, no worries. It's okay. So shit, where did I pick up? Where did I live off?
I'm just trying to figure out what your perspective is,
Basically saying
Tyler.
that you would not view an embryo as the same as a sperm or an
I don't
egg
have
cell,
any
which I think
foreskin,
makes
sorry.
sense.
Well, yeah, those are gametes, but basically, yes. So it's not just a human organism because technically a skin cell would be technically a human organism. It's an organism that's also human. I'm talking about an embryonic organism that develops into adulthood.
Okay, awesome. Now, could you tell me why you have that stance? Why, if it's not about the preservation of life, if it's not about, I can't remember everything that we've discussed this far, but if it's not about the preservation of life, why do you care that just something with human DNA that is like an embryonic organism, why do you care that it continues if it does not have sentience, if it doesn't have conscious life at this point?
Yeah, and I would also say I'm not sure if we're talking about like if it continues. I'm just talking about just their rights, right? Just the same way that you have the right not to be sexually assaulted, even if I didn't know, like sexual assaults happen every day, right? So I don't know these people that have these sexual assaults. I mean, I'm not saying I care or don't care, but I'm saying if I didn't care, it doesn't mean anything for me to also understand that they have the right not to be sexually assaulted, right? So apply that the same thing here. So right, it doesn't matter to me if you're pregnant or not pregnant. What I'm saying is that human being, that human embryonic organism has the right to life.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
That right to life cannot be
It's very
exterminated
confusing
just
phrasing.
because of convenience. Right?
There you go. That's
because
a fair
just
argument.
about every single, almost every single contention that you bring up is just convenience. Either the mother is going to be is destitute and is going to live in poverty, or so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Also, after you're done, I do want to reel it back into this thing of the contention of the last video, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess my point is, why do you think that it has rights? Because legally right now an embryo doesn't. And so again, like I've been saying, you know, if it's not about the preservation of life, why do you think that an embryo has or should have rights?
I don't think he never said it wasn't about the preservation of life.
It doesn't matter if they legally have rights or not, right? In
I'm
1820, black people didn't have rights, right? That doesn't matter.
That's not valid argument. That's not the argument I'm trying to make. I'm just trying to understand your reasoning behind your belief. Because you've been very clear about what you believe, but I'm still confused. Why? If it's not about,
I think now I think if we get to it, Tyler Bowman seems to be pro-life because he doesn't think that you should be able to abort a baby due to some form of convenience, because morally, that's a bad thing. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Life, if it's not even about necessarily the potentiality,
and that's kind of the problem when you come with like a pro-choice argument. It's because like the pro-choice people aren't usually going to acknowledge that like abortion is shitty. It's more about dehumanizing a fetus rather than like the unfortunate understanding that, you know, the death of life is going to be a net gain for society. That's got to work up from.
But especially in cases of rape, where that is going to be so.
Democrats are cringe.
Why I believe that people have the right to life?
No. Why you believe that an
I'm
embryo,
reacting.
something that is not sentient, by my definition, is not a person yet. Why you believe that thing has the right to overtake a woman's body, even in instances of rape where she.
Why did he bring up
that embryo
race? They didn't necessarily bring up race. He brought up the idea that like you know, rights. Like he brought up that like she said like, hey, abortion's legal, so it should stay legal, and then Tyler was like, yes, slavery was legal, should that have stayed legal? That was basically his point. It was a good point. Yeah,
I understand what you're saying, but I think I've already answered that. So what I'm saying, so if you, I heard what your stance was. You don't believe that it's a human being, right? Okay, I believe that it is a human being. Okay, so that's why I believe that human being has the right to life. So if what you're asking me is why I believe, I think what you're trying to ask me is why I believe it's a human being.
I guess I'm just a bit confused because you're not really. I know you said that you would differentiate between like, you know, why you think that an embryo has the right to life any more than a sperm or an egg cell, but you haven't really done that. Like, what makes an embryo significant? You know what I mean? Because
it's a good question. She should push this a little harder, but she's not going to. I could already tell.
25% of our DNA comes from one of our grandparents. So, you know, not to be graphic and talk about myself, but like my eggs have both my parents' DNA in it. That is a unique organism that contains
she's not going to do this right away.
If it is not an embryo. So I'm confused why you think that embryos have a right, whereas
right. But also in your what you're talking about, also it's the same. It would be the same thing. So even though your egg may share some qualities, and you could see that your lineage or whoever you come from your grandparents or your mother, it's the same thing for my DNA, right? We can research my DNA and see that I'm connected to my parents or to whoever, right?
Right. Some people.
Okay.
Some people are just commenting the question why and just asking you to answer.
Tyler, would you fertilize her eggs though? Huh? Just a question.
why, because I think that's one thing we're all struggling to understand is why you believe things.
Why what?
Why you believe that an embryo has more of a right to life than other things that have potential for human life, like a sperm.
I don't believe that it has more of a right to life
than a sperm or an egg cell. So you think someone should be arrested for murder for?
Oh no, than a sperm or an egg cell.
Right. That's what I'm. That's
yeah.
What
So again. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I think I've already answered, but that's okay. I'll answer again. Or I'll answer a different way. So, sperm or an egg cell is a gamete, right? It's not a human embryonic organism, is it?
Right. No. Yeah. Well,
okay, that's it. It's not a human embryonic organism. A sperm cell does not develop. Hold on, I'm gonna finish here. So a sperm cell does not develop into an adult, right? If a sperm cell is left on its own, it doesn't develop into anything. It actually will die. If an egg is left on its own, it doesn't develop into anything, right? A human embryonic organism, if left on its own in the mother's womb, then that does develop into, or develops into whatever. You could say it develops into a fetus, that develops into a newborn, that develops into so on and so forth.
But Tyler, that clarification you make right there, in his mother's womb will develop on its own.
Yes,
because
that's the point of you having a uterus, Victoria.
Without its mother's womb, it can't develop. And so my opinion is that it is the right of the mother to deny the uterus to that embryo. But
again, this is a circular argument because again, it doesn't matter. Here, I'm going to let you finish because you keep cutting off too. So like, it's hard for me to tell when I can talk and not because you're cutting off. So I'll just let you finish.
A sperm and an egg cell need a womb to develop as well.
So guys, chill out with the. Don't be rude.
Like, an embryo can develop into a human being on its own in the mother's womb. So can a sperm and an egg cell. So you're still not.
Who do you think is winning the debate? Tyler's winning the debate. I disagree with him, but like she's struggling to make a point.
You know why you think that an embryo?
I think that, and maybe they get into it later. I think the biggest problem here is that she hasn't even talked about any justification method for having an abortion. Like, that's the thing. You have to talk about why. Like, why do we need abortion? If it's just because women should have a choice, you can go fuck yourself, because that's a stupid reason to kill something because women want it to be dead. You need to have a legitimate reason to want to have an abortion. And she hasn't even discussed it. Tyler has basically said, I don't want abortion should be illegal because it's killing a thing. That's a stance. It's a simple one, but it's a very solid stance. Now she needs to say, hey, this is why we need abortion. And I would say it's because we simply cannot afford to birth all these babies.
Than a single sperm or a single egg cell. And before I continue, because I do think that this conversation is getting a bit cyclical, I don't think that we're going to answer anything. I just want to say that with your stance, you're kind of saying that, like, you know, a human embryo has rights. That's my stance, period. And it's like anyone could say that about anything. I could say that a living animal has human rights. We need to outlaw killing any animals, period. I think that plants have rights. We need to outlaw killing plants.
Yeah, it's a little different.
What you need,
but like, you can make a solid argument for not killing animals. That's the problem. Now she's hurting herself because, like, you could say, like, hey, as a society, we've advanced so much that, like, we should be turning away from animal products. You can make that argument. That's what vegans do. Plants are a bit different. Then it gets into this, conversation and argument, because, like, if you eat less animals, I believe overall you eat less plants because you don't need as much, foliage, whatever you call it. You don't need as much, like, plants to sustain yourself as a cow does. I don't know. That's my understanding, very basic understanding of it. But she's not really helping herself.
Value of an embryo for us. Why you think an embryo is more valuable?
I don't have to do that. First of all, I don't have to do that. And second, you haven't even told me why or how it is not a human being.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for asking that question.
It's a potential human being.
This conversation along.
I feel like that was
she's getting
circular,
so
right?
upset. It's just so sad. I feel bad for her.
And at that point, I think this is one of the issues with abortion debates, is that I feel like we're just never going to agree. So this conversation isn't really going to get anywhere. But moving on, so
I like conversation debate. That's the first mistake, is debating Tyler Bluntman.
Right? Self-awareness is something that is unique to most mammalia species. Human beings definitely.
How do people still use these arguments?
There's some evidence various, intellectual animals have self-awareness as well, but we know that plants don't have self-awareness, right? So no one feels bad about fucking chopping off a daisy. So
I do. I cry every time.
Self-awareness is evident in newborns, right? And I can send you the study if you want. But basically, if you paint
just plug Mio in the middle of that, Tyler. What the fuck are you doing?
And they're looking at.
You're just trying to shake her up.
An inverted version of themselves. They prefer the mirror.
You were cutting off with paintbrush. What did you say after paintbrush?
Oh, sorry. It's just a study that proves that newborns have self-awareness. even if it's days out after being born. You know, when shown a reflection of themselves versus an inverted version of themselves, they prefer the reflection, indicating they do have self. And when we talk about at a cognitive level, this self-awareness is is possible due to the insular cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, and the medial
Too many
prefrontal
words for
cortex,
Papa
right?
God.
And so while the insular cortex begins developing in the 6th week of pregnancy, the anterior cingulate cortex doesn't even begin development until the end of the 2nd trimester. So with this information, knowing where self-awareness stems from and knowing that embryos, certainly fetuses nor embryos, have the capability of self-awareness, one of these defining characteristics that separates human beings from plants is not evident in embryos and fetuses, right? So that it's for reasons like these, and I can get into other like subjective experiences, consciousness, and everything else, but it's for these reasons that I don't understand why you would value an
Okay, I understand. So you're talking about subjective experience, consciousness, and all that. I heard what you're saying. Right, just to make sure that I'm clear. Subjective experience and consciousness.
And well, in this instance, I'm talking about self-awareness.
And self-awareness. Okay, so so what if a human being doesn't have those things?
Well, all human beings have these things.
Well, no. What if your baby is born in a coma?
It's
What if your baby is born catatonic?
Comatose patients,
put it in the garbage.
Comatose patients and brain dead patients are different, and it's important to make that distinction because when you are brain dead, you are legally declared dead. But when you're comatose, you're not, right? When you're comatose, I think there is a right to life there. And when we look at the electrical waves in a fetus,
That's just an appeal to authority. You're just appealing to what? Legality?
no, I'm not even appealing to authority. But what I'm just saying, I think you're drawing a false equivalency comparing.
I'm not drawing an equivalency. I asked you a question.
Well, okay. So
yeah.
I think that she could have done a better job with the coma aspect of it, because there are scenarios where I believe if you're in a coma where they might just like turn off whatever fucking support systems, and if you wake up, you wake up, and if you don't, you die. And you can kind of like equate that to an abortion, kind of, you know, where there is a kind of a chance, like a choice of whether you do or don't want to kill somebody in a coma. But
talking about
it's just a bad argument overall.
Comatose patients still have more essential brain activity than brain dead patients. And it's important to make that distinction because fetuses before, let me look for the exact week, fetuses before the 23-week period actually have similar brain wave activity to brain dead patients. So if your baby comes out in a coma, that baby already has more brain activity going on than a fetus or an embryo.
But what's their subjective experience?
What do you mean? What's their subjective? Well, in that instance, when a baby is born into a coma, there's a chance that they would wake up and have subjective experiences.
That's not what I'm asking you. So you're admitting that it doesn't have subjective
the baby
experience.
could also
You're
have
saying that it has a natural capacity to have subjective experience.
If her argument is the potential subjective experience of a person in a coma, you could apply the same thing to a baby once it's developed. It's a bad argument.
Fairly, it would depend on the case, because let's say a baby's born into a coma, but they were still able to experience subjective.
People do so much just to say that they don't want to, like, just say you want to kill babies, girl. That's what I say.
But this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about, right? So this is why. So I'm trying to break down why you believe a human being is a human being. If you take it, because apparently you're only applying these things. It's a matter of location to you. So like if it's in a human woman, then okay, if it has subjective experience as a person, if it doesn't, then it's not. But if it's outside of the woman in a different location and it doesn't have subjective experience, you're like, oh, well, you know what? I mean, it has the capacity to have to have subjective experience. It could have later. I mean, the child could wake up. So do you not see your own contradiction?
No, because like I said, just in that instance, we see more brain activity going on in comatose patients than brain dead patients. If a baby came out brain dead, having the same brain activity...
That doesn't equate to your subjective experience. That doesn't equate to your guidelines, is what I'm telling you.
Okay. Well,
I'm only for white baby abortions.
That baby still has
Jesus
consciousness,
Christ.
Tyler. I mean, boom, there you go.
It's
I
true.
debunked your argument. That baby
Kill
in a coma
whites.
still has consciousness because of the electrical activity going on in that baby's brain. And if you'd let me explain some of this, maybe we could learn something from each other, you know?
That's not consciousness.
She's getting so
Define
mad.
consciousness.
God damn it, Tyler. I don't have access to my computer. I did have the definition of fetus up, though, in case you
Google
started pulling out
consciousness,
Merriam-Webster.
You said that you were on Instagram. What's the definition of consciousness?
Hey, what's the definition of
Well,
consciousness?
we can see consciousness. It is related to. Hold on. I want to get the exact speak for you. We can see
The state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. So I imagine that somebody in a coma doesn't have consciousness, right?
consciousness begins to develop at the
No, what is consciousness, Victoria? I'm asking you to define consciousness.
define consciousness for me. All I'm saying is that it is evident in a comatose patient.
No, but that's what I'm saying. You can't say that something is evident if you have no idea what it is.
Because
I'm asking you to tell me what consciousness is.
consciousness is associated with the electromagnetic brain waves that occur in comatose patients. So while I
consciousness is being awake, Victoria.
no, it is not, Tyler.
It's true.
That's,
It is. Yeah.
To define, tell me what consciousness is. Pull up some kind of definition. What I'm saying is, hold on, real quick. I'm sorry, but like you keep like dodging my question. I'm asking you what consciousness is, and I'm asking you to define it.
Tyler, dictionary definitions don't matter. But baby is like awake and out in the world at 26 weeks. Babies are experiencing consciousness. It's a lot more than just being awake. Those are two separate definitions.
Victoria, but still, what I'm asking you is you're just telling me what you believe it is. I'm asking you, can you show me anyway? You telling me that
You just
I'm
have to say words
me
are social constructs.
I never said you're interrupting me. Tyler, being knocked out conscious is not consciousness as an idea, and I think you're confusing the two.
As an idea?
Tyler, I don't.
Okay, so what? So this is what I'm asking you. This is what I'm trying to make this like really clear. Like I'm trying to ask you. So what define consciousness? Pull up some kind of anything, a study, Britannica, something that tells me what consciousness is, and tell me that. Because basically what I'm getting at, basically what I'm getting at, that if you are inaccurately defining what consciousness is, then your point is irrelevant and debunked.
All right, Tyler. Let's move past consciousness because clearly we're not going to agree on this.
So you can't. So you don't know. You can't answer it.
Tyler, I answered this question like 3 times.
No, you didn't. You told me what you think it is to you.
I'm not.
I asked you to define it.
Defining it as the Pediatric Journal of Medicine defines it. I don't know what you.
What do they say?
Webster Dictionary, like I.
No, I want you. No, if you're saying the pediatric definition or whatever, I want you to read to me what consciousness means.
Tyler, I'm just letting you know when it begins and what we can. Why don't you read the definition of consciousness to me, Tyler? Like what? I don't understand what point you're trying to prove here. You're getting so bogged down in semantics.
How is it semantics if you cannot define the own terms that you are using? Okay. If you're coming up with your own terms or your own definitions, how is that semantical?
Okay, Tyler, we're gonna move on. Let's move on to interest and desire. I think denying a being of its interest or desire is a moral negative, right? And so if so once babies are able to form at least the instinctual desire to live, I think depriving a baby of that desire is immoral. But
how much time is left?
I don't know.
I can't see on my side. Just tap on live.
I wonder if this is like a tactic from Tyler, because like you notice every once in a while when she's in a flow, he's like derailing her by asking her some stupid fucking question, or it's like, oh, your mic's cutting out. Like it is cutting out, but like you can tell what she's saying. It's like, oh my god, he's bullying her at this point. He's bullying the shit out of her.
We're at 56 right now. I think you joined at like 15, so I think we've got about 20.
We're at 56 minutes.
No, this is like we're at 2:56, so I think we've got about 20 minutes left.
My earwax.
Oh, okay.
What the hell?
Okay, I'm sorry. What were you saying? I'm so sorry. I do want to get back to, because I brought this up earlier. I do want to get back to like another contention that you brought up, but go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to keep up with the comments as well.
Okay, lifeline, girl.
Moving on with we're talking about interest and desire, right? I think that it's a moral negative to deprive a living being of its desires, or if it's interest, even if they're innate, like the desire to live, for example. So that's where we see a comatose baby. That's when we see a comatose baby. It would still have like the innate desire to live, right? That's not present in number one, someone who's brain dead, or in a fetus. So I guess that's another one.
How is it not in a fetus?
Because they do not have the brain structures capable of.
Because we all just want to die, Tyler. You should know that by now. Gen Z is depressed.
Desire, even innate desire, especially when we're talking about embryos. They don't, Tyler. They don't.
But what I'm talking about, so you're talking about, so a contention that you have is are you saying why it's not a human being, or why they don't have rights? I'm sorry.
I'm defining what it means to be a human being, and I'm just saying
okay. That you have to have desire.
I think this is very indicative of like modern day. This says a lot about society, where like there are just like accepted truths in society and nobody questions them, and one of those is abortion, and so people don't actually have good abortion. Like pro-choice people don't usually have like good reasons to be pro-choice. They're just like, it makes, and it does make more sense to me, and I can explain it. And I'll probably have a conversation with Tyler about it. But that's why Tyler is able to just shit on all her points, because she's never really thought critically about it. Because from a societal perspective, you don't have to think critically about being pro-choice. It's just widely accepted regardless of your reason. You could be like, yeah, I'm pro-choice because I like to kill babies. And like society would be like, that's fine as long as you're pro-choice. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, if you're pro-life, you know, you're an asshole. So you kind of have to walk yourself out of a corner constantly. And I think this really comes down to her not being able to have this conversation because she's never struggled to have this conversation.
Not necessarily human being. I'm just saying that I think that it is immoral to deny someone a desire, even if it is an innate desire. I think it's a moral negative. So denying a comatose baby life is a moral negative, whereas aborting a fetus that is incapable of desire is a moral neutral. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Why do you believe that a newborn has the desire to live? Can think for the desire to live. Why do you believe that?
Damn it, I wish that I had Wi-Fi on my computer.
I guess good
Just
point.
when we're talking about reflexes, right? You put a baby's hand to a flame, its reflex will naturally pull it back. So we do know that
that's the same thing. But that's the same thing when they go in certain stages of abortion, they have reflexes. So why is that a contention?
Well, can you give me the specific week where they have reflexes? Because I can promise you an embryo have reflexes. And so at the very least,
well, I didn't say embryo. I said fetus, didn't I?
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying if you're opposed to any and all abortions, including medical abortions, which just expel embryos, then that's not really a valid argument.
Well, no, it is an argument if your argument is just that you have to have desire.
Okay.
I'm telling you that desire doesn't matter.
Could you tell me?
And if it does,
I mean, I guess
matter,
her argument's
what I'm telling you is
here.
that just because if
like what makes her argument okay is that it doesn't seem to be applicable to like I guess this idea of desire, since the baby doesn't recoil away from feeling pain. You would basically say like the baby doesn't feel pain yet, so therefore it can't recoil away from pain, I guess. But it's such a it's such a weird specific argument.
Like, does that mean that someone can take away my right to life or make me no longer a human being if I don't desire life?
Because then I could say that people that are born with like a particular like disease or something that makes them not feel pain, they don't have the desire to live, you know, based on that.
No, because desire can be...
Okay, so then why do you think that what you're
complicated.
saying is even a refutation? Why do you think that that's even a point of argument?
Babies have the instinctual desire to live. We do, because they do have those reflexes. You put a baby's hand up to a flame, it will pull it back. Those are evident from birth. And so...
that's not a desire. That's even just like
And by this own logic, if somebody has a desire to kill themselves, they should be able to kill themselves, right? That would be her logic. Maybe
like a response to like pain.
Right, but
or even touch. That has nothing to do with the desire to live. If you're talking about the desire to live has nothing to do with I think that I have or I want to live, right? My body will tell you that it wants to live, right?
About innate desire to live. So more instinct, I guess, is a better term. That the brain capacity required for that instinctual desire to live is not evident in fetus. So this is why it would be immoral to deprive a comatose baby of life, but I don't think that it is immoral to expel an embryo or to deny a fetus the potential for life.
Okay, so basically what I'm saying is that it's just now we're getting more circular. But what I'm saying is that you did not properly argue what you're saying. You're saying that you have to have some kind of desire. I'm telling you that you don't have to have that mental desire. And then when you're saying an innate desire, I'm telling you that has nothing to do with your brain function at all.
Sorry, I was reading comments. Could you repeat what you said? I'm going to let you know, Tyler, as soon as it turns into like you argued incorrectly, I'm going to tune you out. I hope that this is a more respectful debate.
So
I would like
upset.
A little bit less, you know.
He's being respectful. He's just shitting on all our points. and to his credit, they're bad points from her, so...
Gaslighting and aggression, but I was reading...
trigger words, guys.
The autonomy argument. I think that's a fair...
Triggered gaslighting, trigger word. I got you, conservative. You're triggering me.
So hold on. You keep going into all these arguments. This is like the third time that I've asked if we could go back to like a contention that you had before.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry. Can you go back to what you were saying?
Trigger warning.
Yeah. So in your video that you made, in your video response. Well, hold on. Are we done with this whole desire thing? Because I feel like, what are we saying here?
Sure.
Okay. So
Took
in
the
your,
L here,
in your
girl.
video that
It's
you
rough.
said something about like a contention that you have is that children, if they don't have an abortion, then more children will end up in like the foster care system. Like, what is that? Can you explain that?
There you go. That's an
Oh,
argument.
this was a video I did a long time ago, not one in response to you, right?
I thought it was one that you did on me. No?
I can't remember. Just that if we outlaw abortion,
It could have been another one. Yeah, but can you explain? Like, do you believe that or what?
how I made a video a while ago saying I respect the opinions of pro-lifers who are also pro Medicare for all, who are pro socialized medicine, social programs, so that babies can grow up with more resources. I don't know which video maybe it was my homelessness one where I talked about how some babies were born into homelessness.
Is she not going to this is her defining argument. This is the only argument that she can make, and it sounds like she's not going to make it.
Referencing.
Yeah. What was the homeless one?
I was basically talking about how if a woman is so if you're a conservative and if you are against housing the homeless and you view homelessness as a personal responsibility, but then you force a woman in homelessness to give birth to a baby, or a woman in poverty to give birth to a baby, or you force a woman to give birth to a baby who's going to put that baby up for adoption, and the adoption agency.
Yeah, but what I remember what you said in the video was just that if you force more women to have babies that they don't want, that they will inevitably end up into the or more likely to line up into foster care system or whatever, right?
Yeah.
More of them flood the foster care system.
Or they go on welfare
I
programs,
say
yes.
that a lot of women put up babies for adoption if they're denied an abortion, but I don't know if that's the majority. I've never looked up the statistic.
Oh my God.
I guess what I'm more so asking you is, do you believe that
what is she doing?
If women do not have the abortions, if they give birth to babies that they don't want, are they going to end up like in the foster care system?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I'm sure that is a percentage of women who are forced to give birth, but I mean, also we're looking at women who go to other locations, like women of privilege who are in wealthier positions,
more
are able
trigger
to go to
words.
like California to get an abortion if they can't get an abortion.
Women of privilege.
So I think we're looking at a lot of women who avoid abortion laws, but then also a lot of back alley abortions. So I wouldn't really know. I would have to look at the percentage.
Some of the chat says Papa got his fat.
Out of an abortion. Yeah. To carry that baby to term, I have to see if they will.
Okay, I was only bringing it up because it was a contention of yours, and you said that they will more of them will end up in the foster care system or adoption system. I just want you to understand, and I hope that you agree.
I think they kiss towards the end.
It works when you have a newborn, right? They get adopted immediately. So it's not actually a contention.
Are you saying
for like abortion?
Adoption gets adopted immediately? You cut out. I'm sorry. Are you saying every child put up for adoption gets adopted immediately?
I'm saying that when you go to an adoption agency, like, I don't know, like American Adoptions, like one of the largest here, that yes, they have like a 2 to 7 year waiting period for parents that want to adopt these children, right? They are placed immediately, and they actually never end up in the foster care system.
Yeah, but that's not the case for children in general. And I think it's important to note that just because a woman is denied.
What are you talking about? Like over 60% of when you take into account like all adoption agencies, like over 60% of newborns, I think it's like 62 or whatever percent of newborns are like placed like adopted that month.
I'm not talking about newborns. It's important to clarify that if a woman is not allowed to get an abortion and is forced to have a baby, she may not immediately give that baby up for adoption. A lot of times that baby is born into less than, appropriate circumstances, isn't given the resources.
Yeah.
That baby is birthed into an abusive environment.
Just looking into this, and I understand what he's saying, like newborns tend to be adopted very quickly, which makes sense. My contention to that would be that like with a massive increase in adopted kids, that wouldn't be practical. But apparently only about 2% of kids that in the foster care system do get aborted. I don't think it would be rational or reasonable to assume that if we had an extra 10 or 20,000 kids going into the up for adoption every year, that those kids would be instantly adopted. I also think that she's not focusing enough on welfare, because not everybody would put their kid up for adoption. A lot of them would just go on welfare programs, which would also be very costly to the United States as a whole.
Or toxic environment, and is later either put up for adoption or taken by the system. So I think, I'm sorry if I made that unclear in a video, but it's not always newborn babies that are put up for adoption now.
Sure, yeah, but then that would be more so on the mother's responsibility to do that, right? I mean, it would be the mother's responsibility to reach out to the adoption agency. It's on the mother's responsibility to do all those things, correct?
Well, I just don't think it's moral to force a woman to have a baby that she doesn't have the resources to take care of. Or at least I should say it's immoral to do so if she's not first given options to be able to get rid of that like embryo fetus safely. I think it's just immoral to force her to have a baby in those circumstances. If not at the mother's expense, then at the baby's expense too, you know?
Okay, so you actually don't have a reason not to argue morality, right? Because
somebody asked me why the reasons that I gave are morally okay, and it would be because you know, the reality is that money is the center of life. It is the exchange of goods. It's like a streamlined exchange of goods and services. If we cannot financially support welfare systems, they're going to crash, and society as we know it's going to crash. So the only option would be to cut those services. And then if we cut those services, which is a fine perspective to have, all of a sudden these babies are just going to die of starvation anyway. You see how we get into this perpetual cycle? So when it really comes down to it, pro-choice can be more seen as like pro-not suffering. But death is inevitable. Let's just be honest here.
I mean, you brought up morality like multiple times for someone who didn't want to talk about morality.
I just gave you my I don't have a reason to not argue morality.
Yeah. I mean, you're fine with arguing morality is what I'm saying, right?
Earlier in this
is
debate,
a whole
I just think
moral
that
argument.
morality,
Yeah.
like you've said multiple times in this conversation, it just creates cyclical conversation.
Subjective.
It's so subjective. Because I personally
Yeah.
think it's immoral to force a woman to birth a baby into like abusive circumstances, whereas I'm sure
ABC beard.
you know.
Silly.
Right. Understood.
This morality argument as objective as possible by bringing up, you know, all these structures in the responsible for things that intrinsically give human life value, but you don't really want to.
No, right. Yeah, absolutely. So what are your other like issues with like the pro-life argument?
What do you mean? What are my other issues with the pro-life argument?
Well, what are your issues with pro-life, like being pro-life, like with making something like making this illegal?
I want to be clear. I have nothing against pro-life people. I used to be pro-life, and then I kind of went on a journey to understand. And this is where
Why did you switch?
Well, so I was originally pro-life. I was born in a Republican home.
Maybe she just wanted to kill more black
pro-life,
people.
but I just
Racist, am I
kind of
right,
thought,
Tyler?
like, oh, it's a baby. You know, I want to protect that baby. And then middle school, we were just learning a lot about politics in general. That's when, you know, I was confronted with the idea of abortion. And so that's when I kind of went on this journey to understand cognitive development.
Wait, can we just have a conversation about this? Like, I'm pro-choice for sure. I have like a real reason to be pro-choice. But can we talk about how like this girl basically just said like, hey, she had a particular frame of thought and then she went to school and she changed her frame of thought, but she still can't express that frame of thought very well. And that's my contention with her argument, is that she has no real reason to be pro-life. Like she can't actually articulate why she's pro-choice, and like that's the problem with fucking school, is that you go to school, they teach you something, but they won't tell you why that something should exist. And this is like a huge fucking problem. Honestly, a huge fucking problem. Let's say you go to school and you learn something like, I don't know, critical race theory. It's not a bad thing. Critical race theory is very interesting, and I think that there are levels of application to society potentially. But like part of it could potentially be your teacher teaching you to hate white people. It's like, well, how is that helpful? It's like, well, because white people, you know, get what I'm saying? And you don't really know why. Like I had a conversation with a young girl once. So there was like, why, why should we exempt white people from being able to be the target of racism? And she couldn't even explain herself. She's like, well, if you were in the class, it's like, well, if I was in the class, the teacher would kick me out because the teacher is a fucking moron for even teaching them in the first place. You understand my point? People learn things without actually understanding them, and it's a problem.
Us, just because I want to get spiritual about it. You know, me being a Christian, I do believe in a soul, and I think that a soul is
in a soul. Yeah, a lot of my followers thought that it was weird that you were a Christian that does not believe in or believes in abortion.
Yeah, and that's an interesting. We can talk about that.
I wonder how many Christians.
I mean, I don't care because I'm not religious. So.
I feel like it's probably fairly common.
Say in the chat, separation of church and state, whatever. And I do subscribe to that ideology, obviously. But when we're talking about a pro-choicer, I just find it so interesting to note that the church has not always been against abortion. You know, back in the day, religious leaders and philosophers who believed that
I think 75% of the population is okay with abortion.
Didn't even begin developing until like the third month. Weird things like that. And
a lot of people just want more regulation and restriction on it.
personally, I just don't think an embryo, as soon as it is
Yeah, where I
conceived,
saw
has a
that.
soul. And again, this is all purely subjective. I think that, you know,
Well, this
there
is
needs to
a
be cognitive
good.
development. There needs to be consciousness. There needs to be
Wait, so she's religious. This is what's so funny because one of my arguments for sure would be like the idea of a soul existing, but like she's acknowledging that souls exist, right? That's her belief system is like souls exist. She just doesn't believe that they exist in a fetus. Like honestly, if you thought a soul exists, it exists. Like where in the Bible does it tell you the time where a soul's in your body? I would, based on the non-explanation of that, I would assume that God's based on the Bible. There's always a soul. So the second that my sperm hits a girl's egg, I ejaculated a fucking ghost into that baby, right? So how do you decide when you're religious when there's a soul in the baby? Really, you should focus more on, based on your religion, is the baby damned to hell if it's aborted? That would be more better argument there.
awareness in order to have the soul. But
yeah, you can't assign your own
totally
value to
derailed.
when it
That's
has a
just kind of my
soul.
perspective on Christianity. And
Ask the
for choice,
Pope.
Now, my question to you:
Ask the
how
Pope.
do you feel? Like I said in the beginning, how do you feel about the embryos discarded by IVF each year? Because it's thousands.
Sure. Can you explain how it happens and why it happens?
So basically, embryos are put together in a petri dish for couples.
Oh, in vitro
and not every
fertilization.
single embryo is used. So those embryos are abandoned and discarded.
This is
They're
a
just
fair
thrown away.
argument.
They never
It's very specific, but it's very random.
Yeah, I think that the reason why they're also doing it though is to maximize their implantation.
My understanding of the fetuses being discarded are because they just are bad fetuses that would never make it. Or rather, the embryos, whatever. You understand what I'm saying. That's my understanding when it comes to in vitro, is that like they put a bunch in there, but like they're simply not all good. That's it. Like, it's not like, I don't think that we're like systematically just fucking like, let's just kill this one and keep that one. That would seem rather not very cost efficient. So I think that there are ones that are damaged and would never actually be able to come to life. That's my understanding. I'm not 100% on that, but that's my understanding from what I've looked into.
but not
For the success of implantation.
Right, but not all of these embryos get implanted. They are abandoned in the petri dish.
Yeah, I would say that I'm indifferent. I would say that I understand why that they would need to do it, but I also have moral qualms about it, right? I'm indifferent to it. I mean, I don't like that it happens.
He could simply just say that I don't believe in vitro fertilization or something. And
but I understand why they would need to do it. I would need to know more about the science of it and how exactly they go about it. But yeah,
that's a fair,
just on the surface level, it doesn't seem like
argument.
Something that would be morally justifiable for me if they are intentionally discarding these embryos.
This is not intentional. They just create these embryos, and either the parents never collect them, or the parents either never collect them, or an embryo attaches and they didn't know if it would. So
so basically, she said that either the parents didn't collect them, and in that case, you could just be like, okay, well, the parents did a wrong thing, or they were unusable, and in that case, what the fuck are you supposed to do with an unusable? Like, I don't think Tyler would argue that about that miscarriages are bad, right? Like, hey, miscarriage. If you had a miscarriage, you're a bad person. I don't think Tyler would think that at all. I think, you know what I'm saying? So like the non-viability of a particular embryo, I don't think Tyler would be like, no, we gotta force it to live. It's like, no, if it's gonna die, it's gonna die, dog. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And maybe I'm reaching.
So they're just like left there. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and discarded. And so the embryos.
Yeah, I don't like. Yeah, I'm not with that shit at all.
Right. So that's where I get confused and a little bit upset with pro-lifers, is that they seem to have this inconsistent activism where they're
like if they support it, you mean?
Well,
or they don't care.
Not necessarily, right? Not necessarily that they support the discarding of these embryos. It's just to be apathetic towards it. You know, we're not here having a debate over the discarding of IVF embryos.
Yeah.
You're having a debate about abortion, and I just think that it's interesting that
pro-lifers
don't really seem to care about that, nor do pro-lifers care about that 50% of embryos that don't attach to the uterine lining and are naturally attached. Why are they not being?
I wouldn't have said. Yeah, I wouldn't have said that I didn't care about it. I would have more said that I was just ignorant.
Oh, you could have shit on her right there. You heard what she said. She's basically said, like, I don't know why pro-lifers don't care about the embryos that don't work. It's like because pro-life people aren't fucking like dumb in that regard. Like I said, like I don't know. I haven't seen a single pro-life person in today's society that's like, oh my god, you had a miscarriage, you're a bad person. Miscarriages are technically abortions, but pro-life people aren't like, oh, you have to have. Like, if you have a miscarriage, you're a bad person. That actually used to be something people thought. So, like, this whole argument of, like, yeah, what happens if the embryo doesn't work? It's like, I don't know. That's life. I don't. What the fuck is she talking about?
There, and because you now explained it to me, and I said that before.
Oh, maybe he is going to go in on it.
What the point was is that that does not seem right to me.
Oh no, he doesn't, but he could.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. I genuinely, without a moderator here and without questions being asked, I don't know if this is a debate as much as
this is more of a this is totally much more of a discussion.
Right.
This is definitely a debate.
I'm trying to stay away from like I gotcha moments and that kind of thing because I am just genuinely trying to suss out how you feel and how consistent your ideology is, and it does seem to be pretty consistent. And obviously, there's nothing I can say to get you to change that ideology, but maybe this will be.
Yes, you could. You could.
Well, shit, I don't think I'm going to. But
you could. So this is how it is. So basically, for most pro-lifers, specifically me, but for most pro-lifers, I would think that for you to really to make us pro-choice. You would have to do like one of two things. You would have to either A, convince us that it is definitively not an embryonic human organism in the womb, right? You'd have to do that, which obviously that's against you. Or you would have to convince us that, okay, you acknowledge that, all right, so this is a human being, but women or parents or whoever have the right to kill their children or terminate their children's life. You'd have to convince us of that. Right, so
I guess that would be where I would go.
Lives, right?
I guess that's where I'd have to go.
If you could do one of those two things, I think that you are more likely to bring someone over to the pro-choice side.
So, should we talk about bodily autonomy, or is
that's a good argument though, because it's certainly like it's not a human life, but it's a potential human life. So like we have to knock it off with that. But like, yeah, I think that's pretty much my argument. Is like, yeah, you should be able to kill your kids. At a certain point, of course.
That just an ideology
which would be like
refuse to listen to it all. Just the idea
first
that
trimester, maybe second.
I'm open to listening to everything. I'm not one of those people who shuts down arguments.
How common of an argument bodily autonomy is, and I know that when we're discussing the morality of abortion, the legality of abortion, it's not the most compelling argument. But under bodily
it's true,
autonomy,
you do have to feed kids every day.
That a woman has a right to her body, and in the same way that you can, and I hate analogies.
A baby has a right to their body by that logic.
In the same way that you don't owe someone a kidney. If someone's dying from kidney failure, you're not obliged to give them a kidney. And that's a mother's not obliged to give her uterus to a baby that she doesn't want.
I don't know.
Well, those are two separate things.
They are two separate things.
Right. So why do you?
I mean, like outside of rape, like if you decide to have sex, it's with the understanding that you may have a baby.
Well, they're falsely analogous. So, for one, you're talking about someone will naturally die if you do not give this person, an organ of yours. You're not responsible for that person. You do not. They do not have the right to take anything from you. Right? If they are going to naturally die, then they are going to naturally die. If you want to go ahead and give them whatever, then you absolutely could. But yeah. So now, when you're talking about abortion, or I'm sorry, when you're talking about like a fetus or an embryo in the womb, again, that really comes back to in 99%, if you want to talk about rape cases, we can go into that. But when you're talking about the 99% that actually do willingly invite these embryos or fetus or human beings or whatever you want into their womb, then they invited it. It's kind of the same way that like if I'm lactose intolerant, right, and I decide to eat or drink a milkshake, right, I can't just I am taking the risk of having like crazy shits later, right? The same way that when you engage in sexual activity, you are taking the risk that you would get pregnant. It doesn't matter even if you have contraception, all things like that. I think that's good to do, and I think that more people should exercise contraception. And I think contraception should definitely be more widely available. However, that doesn't refute or overcome my argument.
So, and two things with what you just said. You said that it's a false analogy because if you don't provide your kidney to a person, they will naturally die without it. And you do understand that that is the same when we're talking about an embryo or a fetus. I do not grant an embryo access to my uterus; it will naturally die.
You did.
It cannot exist outside the womb. Then in this case, would you say bodily autonomy is a fair argument in the cases of rape? Because while it is a small percentage, it does happen. And as far as I'm aware, you said that it should be illegal even in terms of rape.
Yes, but that's because I still believe that no matter what, that's still an innocent
I think that
human being, and it wouldn't over.
Like, I disagree with you with rape, but you should put aside the rape argument because like you can't use a 1%, you can't use a minority argument on a majority argument.
on that. However, what I would say, if you're talking about in like practical legality, like if the 99% of abortions were made illegal, and then it's only in cases of rape and incest, which is like 1% or less than 1%, then I would still coin that as a win because we are saving the other 99%.
Right.
Hey,
so
Ryan
then
Beard,
you
what's
would
up, my
agree
man?
With, just because you said to me that the way to convince a pro-lifer to not be pro-life is by making an argument that the mother has a right to deny her body to that baby, and so I'm saying
No, to kill. No, I didn't say that.
Okay, to kill. So a mother has that. So I'm saying that
to kill their child. Yes.
So I'm saying under bodily autonomy, a woman has that right to deny a fetus her uterus. And you were saying, well, no, because she invited that fetus in. So I'm saying that in rape, by your own logic, you would have to abortion in cases of rape, because in that case, a woman did not invite a baby into her uterus, and it is her uterus. And
you know what, Tyler? I know Tyler doesn't say this, so I'm going to say, Tyler, what you could say to that is that as we, not to give you more arguments, but as we move forward in society, if her whole argument is that a baby shouldn't be basically a parasite in her body, then we should explore like womb technology, like synthetic womb technology, which we actually already are exploring. And so that can be the alternative to her abortion argument right there.
Under bodily.
Right. But like we talked about earlier, where I already told you and I explained through that analogy that it doesn't matter if someone, I mean, it matters when I'm talking about this argument more so for you, not for me. But for me specifically, even if someone were to drop their child
did you bring that up?
Through your window or whatever, or some stalker.
It's a good thing that she never brought up fetal viability, because that always shifts based on technology too.
And drop the child into your home, it still doesn't give you any legal right or moral right to kill that child, right? So it really wouldn't refute my argument.
I would just
I'm just saying that I'm sorry. So I'm so sorry. I'm just saying that if you're saying that I have to choose between all or nothing, if you're saying that I have to choose between if we have a chance to make the 99% of abortions illegal, or we make none of them, 100% of them stay legal, then I would say that would still be a win in practical legality. But still, I believe it to be wrong, and I wouldn't stop fighting for that. I would still say that in cases of rape and incest, that it still needs to be legal.
Okay, well, because that's what I was about to say. In that instance, if you truly did believe that abortion was murder, then babies would still be being murdered, under your own idea.
Of course, yes, of course. But what I am saying is that you get what I said, right?
Yeah, no.
I think I'd be saying it like a third time. So.
And this is where I think it's important to have people with uteruses in this conversation. Understand how scary the implications of your argument are. Right?
Yeah. So now she's getting all triggery. What did she say before? I forgot what she said. Oh, she was like gaslight. She used the word gaslighting. Blah blah blah. Now she's steering the conversation towards Tyler. Since you're not a woman, you really can't have a say on this, and that's, I think, kind of a shitty argument, because it's a societal conversation, right? Because if you made the argument that only women, and this is where she's going like in a more like a subtextual basis, but if you made the argument that men shouldn't be able to have the conversation about abortions, then we flip side that and say that women can't have the conversation about what the fuck am I trying to say? You know what I'm trying to say. Somebody tell me what I'm trying to say. Child support. That's what I'm saying.
No.
Which is both stupid, because as a society, we should be able to have a conversation about what the best outcome for us is.
I guess you don't understand. That's right. I could go out for a run and be a trigger warning, y'all, big fat trigger warning, and be brutally raped, impregnated against my will, and then forced to carry that baby for 9 months and give birth to it. I mean, that is not to mention the health repercussions that can come from pregnancy, the way that it hurts.
I am not saying it's not traumatic. I am not saying that.
It's kind of shitty then. If you're understanding it's not as traumatic, it's kind of shitty for you to be like, fuck it.
Because we're already, and I mean, again, this is
still deal with it.
Being
I don't know why she didn't say that.
To the conversation. I've been getting rape defense training, and I'm sure all the girls in the chat will agree. We've been getting rape defense training since we were in 8th grade, I want to say, was my first one, just through school and through different organizations outside of school.
So Tyler, please.
Unfortunately, we walk with pepper.
You should have told her to get a gun. I should just,
tasers and
you should have just
whatnot,
said that we
because
should
it is
have
such a
more gun
prevalent fear.
expansion. To get a
And
gun,
so the idea that we could be impregnated against our will on top of that rape
throw that
is
in the mix.
terrifying.
I'm being
So living
serious.
in this,
You should
Europe,
have.
where all abortion is
Get a gun.
illegal,
Shoot the
I think
fuck
is
out of
very,
any
very
rapist.
scary. And I think that's where we need to look at the realistic implications of abortion law, as opposed to just talking about this in a philosophical context.
Yeah, but I think that that's just an appeal to emotion. I don't think that it really matters. Like I said, I believe that it is traumatic for anyone who is sexually assaulted. I mean, it's not like men couldn't be sexually assaulted, but if you're talking about being impregnated, then obviously only women can be impregnated. I don't know. Today's terms, maybe.
Tyler, so
But,
progressive of
yeah, so
you.
only women can-
Tyler, were you thinking about me when you said that? I was just about to say, Tyler, not very accepting of you.
Be impregnated. But yeah, I think that it's completely traumatic.
It's so funny.
Your feelings, right? Your
funny.
Emotional distress, your feelings.
I do have two guns
while
on me all
I
the
believe
time.
that they are important, they are nowhere near as important as a child's right to life. So that's why when I say that all of these things, all these contentions that you bring up, they're almost just non-contentions to pro-lifers because none of it refutes the fact that we believe that that child, that unborn child, has the right to life. So even though you do have those traumatic experiences, yeah, this is so much more of like, it may have started off kind of like debatey, but this definitely evolved more into like a conversation. So like,
Yeah.
Does that make sense from like the pro-life side?
Yes, that does make sense.
And if it doesn't, then could you explain to me how it doesn't?
No, that does make sense from the pro-life side. I've been keeping
Well,
an
it's
eye on the
absurd
comments.
human
I
right.
want to address one thing in the comment section. Someone just came out here and said that I only use emotional arguments to debate. Can we please agree that just most of my arguments have not been emotional until this point?
I would say
Maybe, I don't
that
know.
you do appeal
It's
to
very
emotion a fair amount. However, if
This is
you're
a very emotional topic. Of course, you're going to appeal to emotion.
talking about this specific conversation, I would say that it's not the entirety of your. I would say though that you do use appeal to emotion fallacy. I would also say that you use red herrings. I would say that you use non sequiturs. So I say that you are fallacious in a lot of ways.
I hate debate terms. They're so
but yeah, I wouldn't say it's
stupid.
all appeal to or all emotional.
These
And even
nuts.
if it's emotional,
Hey.
by the way, for anyone watching or listening to the chat, whether you agree with me or you don't agree with me,
Do you ever
just
use the
because something
dragon
is an
fallacy?
emotional argument does not mean that
Dragon
it
these
is
nuts.
wrong, right? So
Across your
your
face.
emotional argument can still be backed up with data and facts. However,
Got 'em.
if it is strictly just based on emotion, then that's just an appeal to emotion.
I just wanted to address that really quick because and I've expressed this on
Can somebody in my
TikTok,
chat try to get
just
her
as
into
women,
my
it's
Twitch?
very easy to be seen as overly. So I wanted
'Cause
to
I'll
get
talk with
that
both
right
of you
then.
after
I mean,
this.
y'all
Yeah.
about cognitive like that. You know, I appeal to
Yeah.
time, so that comment was just very annoying. Anyway,
Someone go
moving on.
So
spam
just to
her
be clear-
chat.
Yeah, just to be clear,
This
also shit.
go
Shit.
spam
What
her.
was I going to say?
He's gonna poop himself.
Something that you said earlier. Ah,
I want to address a point that you made a little bit ago that I didn't have
Her
time to.
TikTok is handle
just in the
is
instance
in
of a
the.
woman being raped and forced to carry that baby, like you do understand that can be risking her own life as well.
What's her TikTok?
You know, what are your thoughts on like ectopic pregnancies and pregnancies that could
ectopic pregnancies.
and
Yeah.
pregnancies that put the mother's life at risk?
So I would say for one, it depends on how late we're talking about as far as ectopic pregnancies. But I'm just going to give you.
Well,
I'm going to talk a little bit about. I'm going to say two things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it.
You know what I forgot? As I'm doing this, Tyler is gonna take every single fucking clip of me shitting on her, and he's just gonna put it on his goddamn TikTok. You fucking asshole! Make sure you at least plug the fucking YouTube video, okay?
Ectopic pregnancies, and I'm just going to say it in a more general sense, which will include ectopic
All
pregnancies.
right. And make
So
sure,
for
and
one-
they just do me a favor. Make sure you say, "Oh, it'll be up on YouTube or something," and then just tell people I'm pro-choice, just so they know for context. All right?
Ectopic pregnancies. For most of the pro-life crowd,
Actually, I
they
don't
pretty
give a
much
fuck about
accept
that, but
that as an unavoidable loss of human life. So it's almost just unavoidable. So they don't even really look at it so much as something that can't. I mean, the woman would die if it doesn't happen, right? So it's a very rare and special circumstance. So that's the one thing. However, what I would also say is that it doesn't matter if it's an ectopic pregnancy. It doesn't matter if there is some other issue, if the mother's life is in danger when we're talking about how the quote unquote abortion is performed. If you go in there, if a doctor goes in there, and they have countless medical professionals and physicians that back this up, and they will tell you that there is no legitimate reason to actually go in with the intent to abort. Now, if the doctor, all the doctor needs to go in and do is either deliver that baby or remove that baby, right? But if you go in with the intent to abort, like you go in there to scramble it up or whatever the hell you're going to do, depending on the developmental stage of that fetus or embryo, right? Then that is really what matters. So, I mean, before we thought that 28 weeks or 27 weeks was viability, and now we know that you can have children at 21 weeks and they survive.
I think viability at this point is potentially 15 weeks. I think is something I read.
Is like
viability is
Lila
garbage
or Lilia
argument.
or something like that. She was born at like 21 weeks, and she's, you know, like a child. She's like 7 or 8 or however old she is. So, you know, if we just said, well, it's not viable, then we're not going to try. We're just going to go in with the intent
Maybe I'm
to
wrong
abort.
with that, but
it's like, no, you need to go in with the intent to save both lives. Now, obviously, if you have a 9-week-old or a 10-week-old, currently medical science does not allow us to do that. However, that does not mean that we still go in with the intent to abort. Does that make sense?
Yes. So I'm telling you right now, gun to your head, you can only it's either.
I thought you don't like hypotheticals.
Well, this is
hypotheticals are
all the
everything.
time. Women
Okay.
choice between their life and their baby's life, right? So in that instance,
Like in what instance?
if
Like just a medical emergency?
a mother is guaranteed to die during labor, even with
Sure.
infection. So if you're given the choice between baby's life and mother's life, you know, which one do you choose?
Well, that's not even like a. I would say for one, I think it would be up to the mother. To be fair,
Yeah.
if it's between. Well, hold on. Let me finish. If you're saying that definitively that one will die over the other, then obviously the mother's life takes precedence, right?
You say obviously there, but if you truly
She should have really roped on that, because Tyler Bass has effectively said that the mother's life is more valuable than like the embryo here. She could use that. I wonder if she does.
viewed an embryo as a human being, it wouldn't be obvious. If you viewed it as a moral being of consideration.
Well, no, that's not the same thing at all. Because for one, so what's gonna
So it's that the abortion debate is probably the most hardest for women not to be biased in. I think that people, like, it's okay to be a little biased when it comes to things. That's okay. It's just, you know, justify your bias, you know.
gonna happen if the
How would you ever know definitively? I think that's like basically up to a doctor. Like, I mean, at that point, it's like, hey, the doctor might have been wrong on accident, but like you would generally expect a doctor to know whether it would or wouldn't definitively come out. Like, there's a margin of error, but in good faith, a doctor would be like, hey, listen, the baby's not going to survive, or one of you isn't going to survive. That comes on like experience of a doctor.
if the mother dies.
Tyler.
Like, I don't think, like, let's say like doctors are wrong 10% of the time. I don't think that that Tyler would be like, well, since 10% of the time they say that it's the baby's or the mother's going to die, that means that we should just roll the dice. No, you know, there's human error, of course.
To kill a newborn baby and its mother, which one would you, knowing nothing?
I'm not killing any.
No, but you have to. Okay, you just have to. Okay, gun to your head, you have to, because you said.
Newborn baby is different from a mother. If you ask me to choose between a newborn baby, an actual newborn, and a mother, I'm choosing the newborn baby. You just so that she's aware of that. It's a fucking child. If you're asking me between an embryo and a mother, that's a little bit different. It's very shaky, but like at the end of the day, mother's choice when it comes to that, for sure.
Said between an embryo and or between a fetus and its mother.
But again, you're just putting. But what you're doing. Hold on, Victoria. What you're doing is you're bringing up the fire analogy again that you already said that wasn't great, right? And we already said that was falsely analogous because you're forcing someone into that decision.
No, I'm pointing out that you do not value fetal life the same way you value babies' lives. I'm trying to point that out.
That's true. Yeah.
Because if you.
I already told you that value doesn't matter to my argument.
Tyler, I'm just pointing out your inconsistency when you said, okay.
That's not inconsistent. I said that value doesn't matter.
I think value does matter. This is where you get your argument gets a little shaky.
Let me finish that. Because from where I'm inconsistent,
I think value is like the whole thing, though.
Pregnant between her or her fetus. Obviously, the mother's life is precedent. So I said, okay, now you're forced to choose between like
Give the baby to a
killing
homeless person
baby,
to eat.
Newborn baby or its mother, and that's an impossible decision.
You said a newborn.
And so I would give the baby to a homeless person to eat because I care about feeding the homeless. But here's the thing: is like how much resources are you investing into birthing this baby over 9 months? It might be cheaper to just abort the baby and just give the homeless person food money.
Baby.
Actually, it would be.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, it's completely subjective. It's whatever my emotional attachment is to either one. Both of them. Hold on.
I would say, Tyler, if value is
not
not your argument, what I would ask you is like, why does it really matter then? If there's no value to the baby, or like then what does it matter if that's not part of your argument?
But in your circumstance, you are forcing someone to choose. So what I would tell you is that
Papa. Fuck you, Ryan.
neither would really be immoral because you are forcing someone to choose based on their own subjective experience. That is falsely analogous to when we're talking about abortion.
Do you understand though how you're struggling to choose between a baby and a mother, so quick to choose the mother over the fetus? I'm just pointing.
You're cutting off. I heard the quick.
Yeah, I can't really hear anything that she's saying.
I'm just pointing out you're very quick to choose the mother over the fetus, but it's a lot more to choose the mother over the baby. And I think
this is really bad.
That a fetus is not the same
I can't
as
understand
baby.
what she's saying.
Aborting a fetus is not the same as killing a baby.
Yeah, that's fine, Tyler.
Yes, it is.
Well, Tyler, you just
again. No, you're not understanding what I'm saying, Victoria. I can't make it any clearer to you. What I'm saying, and we agreed. Hold on.
Tyler, a mother and a newborn.
Can I finish?
Save. Which one do
you? Victoria, can I finish?
Yeah. Okay, Tyler.
Okay. So did we or did we not earlier in this discussion? Did we or did we not say that it is completely subjective when we were talking about saving a 5-year-old versus saving a 90-year-old, saving whoever?
With that analogy, if someone asked who you would kill, your mother or a complete stranger, obviously you would choose kill a stranger. Oh yeah, for sure. I understand that. I understand that argument. I think Tyler's going to bring that up. We'll have a conversation about that.
Did you or did you not agree that is completely subjective?
Tyler, this whole conversation is subjective. I'm trying to understand.
Yes or no? I'm asking you a yes or no question.
How about Papa decides which baby we live in?
Okay. I'm getting there. So we already established that is completely subjective, and we also already established that if you are forced with that decision, if you're telling me as an outsider, I am forced to make the decision for someone else. Right? It's not even myself. If I am forced to make that decision for somebody else, what I'm telling you is that is completely subjective to whatever I believe. Again, if that was whoever, if that was my brother or my wife or my whoever, it's completely subjective to my emotional attachment.
I thought you were going to throw out the N-word there, Tyler. My
attachment. And what I'm saying is that it's not going to be immoral no matter which one you choose, because you are
Don't cancel me
for
that
decision.
One. Okay.
So what you're doing is you're making a disingenuous argument and trying to say that, well, if you're forced to choose if you're forced to choose between this or this, Tyler, if you choose this one, then that's morally inconsistent. That's not, because you're forcing me as an outsider to choose for someone else. And that's why I told you that if that would be up to the mother, if she is going to choose between her life and someone else's. The same way that if I have to choose between my life or yours, or my life and my kids, or my life and my brothers, or my life and my best.
The only time I drop the N-word with an A in it is if I'm listening to Childish Gambino in the car by myself, okay?
Friends or whatever, that's completely up to that individual. You're trying to say that me as an outsider is going to choose for that other person. It's just completely it's intentionally disingenuous. And the fact that you don't understand that that's intentionally disingenuous.
6 states have abortion up to birth. I'd like you to show me that if you could. I'll give you your points back if you link that to me. I'd like to see that.
It's concerning,
Tyler,
because that's a problem. I mean, I'm getting off track, but here's the problem with an abortion conversation is that most people are actually for pro-choice, but a lot of people want to like limit it more. Basically, the first trimester, most people have that argument, which I think is rather fair. But then, like, what happens is that pro-lifers won't really concede they won't really compromise from like a law perspective, and so like you see pro-choicers just kind of just taking a ball and fucking running with it, like progressives, like a bunch of assholes. So I'd like to see where they say that. I know abortion in New York is up to birth, but it's not fully up to birth. It's only if the mother's life is in a jeopardy in some capacity. You could argue that like the parameters for it are a little bit dishonest, because I think that like you could do it even if you're just feeling mentally stressed. But it's 24 weeks in New York, and then up to birth if like basically if it's the value of the mother's life is or the mother's life is in some form of a threat, or the baby is not considered viable.
Not talk about disingenuous arguments. You were over here asking.
Was it not disingenuous?
I just let you ramble for about 5 minutes. Please let me. Let's not talk about disingenuous arguments when during debate and several other debates, you just yell
Could I
at
just say, I know it's so mean, but like imagine it feels like the more frustrated and stressed she gets, the more frustrated and stressed that she gets, the more that her mic cuts out. Maybe she has superpowers.
asking for Merriam-Webster dictionary definitions of terms, and if someone cannot provide that, you immediately discredit their argument.
Mother's health.
That's
Okay.
disingenuous
That's
argument.
When in this debate, because you said in this debate, when in this debate did I ask you for?
Yeah, that's what I was saying when it comes to the mother's health. That's the argument that you could like get a little finicky on, because you know it could be suggestive that like a doctor may like in bad faith kind of allow the mother to have an abortion very late, even if there aren't any real parameters, because their mental health could be part of it. For sure. Yeah, for sure.
When we were talking about consciousness.
But I hadn't
Now, let
mentioned
me
that
finish.
No, I
originally.
didn't. I asked you if it could be from Botanical. I asked you from any type of source, not very much.
Well, you asked me for a definition. To the people screen recording, we'll run the
That
clip.
you could. That oh sure, the definition that you couldn't provide. But go ahead.
Tyler, that's a
It's-
disingenuous argument. I mean,
It's not disingenuous, not for nothing, but you couldn't even provide like he did use the whatever Webster's dictionary, whatever, but then she's like, no, it's part of the pediatric, like as if I'm going to listen to a kid's definition of consciousness. But no, jokes aside, you didn't produce it. You could have just Googled it and showed us.
Jesus Christ. But
That's not disingenuous. That's factual.
Tyler, moving on.
What's
I
the
am
death rate
pointing
of a
out
pregnancy?
that you do not see embryo or fetus as the same as when having to choose between saving the mother and the fetus. Said question the mother. But when choosing between saving a mother and a newborn baby, you said that was impossible, and then you immediately
This is so sad.
So apparently 700 out of... Hold on.
It's not sad. Why do you go for
Because this is a circular argument. I've already refuted that, and you just keep going back to it, thinking that somehow it's going to make it make more sense.
there were pro-lifers in the chat saying, and again, we've got screen recordings being like, yeah, dude, she's right. You do value baby life.
I already told you that the value does not matter. Again, this is a non sequitur. You are just
So
you are arguing against something that I never made that contention. I actually started off.
I think we have about 4 million births per year and like 700 dead mothers per year in the United States. So that's a very low percentage of death.
Hold on, I'm kind of answering what you're talking about. Like I started this debate off by telling you that the value does not matter. I told you that explicitly multiple times. It has nothing to do with the value of a human being. Value is completely subjective. That is why I am telling the value does not matter. It is all about just what they have the right to. They have the right to life. You are arguing against a point I never made. It feels like this is just like some I don't know, generic talking point that you would have against some Republican or something, but it's not my argument.
Tyler,
I think I'm understanding your value argument a little more. I just still think that there's value entangled in it, just in a different way. But I get what you're saying. You're talking about like individual subjective value, right? If I'm right about that.
killing a baby is not the same as killing a fetus under your own ideology, because you were able to choose the mother's life over the fetus's life without question. But when posed with the question between a baby and a mother, you could not answer. So killing a baby in
I could not answer what? I couldn't answer what?
you could not. Which one would you kill? A mother or which one would you let?
I wouldn't kill either.
Which one would you let die? If one of them was going to die.
Again, it's falsely analogous. You are trying to say that I, as an outsider, have to choose between two things. I'm telling you that I'm...
Letting something die and killing it are very different things. Like you could just say like, I don't give a fuck, let nature take its course and what's going to become dead based on life circumstances. She kind of shifted her whole argument from abortion to like, I don't know, miscarriage or something. Equivalency? I don't know.
Hold on. What I'm telling you, it's no different than saying that, Tyler, you have to choose between this 5-year-old, you have to choose between this 90-year-old. It's no different. You are forcing me to choose between two separate human beings, so it's not immoral either way. It is completely subjective. I don't know why you're dancing, because you...
She's really upset, Tyler. You really upset her.
So, like,
Tyler, you just need to be more empathetic to the people you debate. She's very upset right now.
everything that you're saying, it's completely disingenuous. You're trying to have some kind of dunk moment, but you are failing to do it.
I'm not failing to do it. I know you love the personal attacks when you feel like you're flailing, but bro, you literally
Yeah.
Bro, you don't understand what I'm saying. It's not my fault that you can't comprehend it.
Without question, you were able to choose the mother's life over the fetus, but whenever I said baby or mother, you said that's the same as a 5-year-old or a 9-year-old child. That's entirely subjective. You do not view baby life is
I
the
get
same
to
as
kill
fetus
any
life, and
person who's
before-
inside. Ryan says, I just believe I get to kill any person who's inside of me. Get out, person, even if I'd say. So basically, if a guy put his pee-pee in your butt, you get to kill him, dude? That's pretty fucked up, bro.
You get into this whole argument about like, oh, value doesn't matter. Literally, as someone was mentioning in the chat, value is what dictates rights. Value is what separates us. And this is the core of my argument. And I'm upset we spent so long getting derailed. But value does dictate right to life. We value human life.
No, it doesn't.
I think
We value life over-
it does. It does. So Tyler's talking about individual value, and she's talking about like overall societal value. And I would say that society specifically places a value on abortion, or rather on like fetuses versus babies. Like society values a baby more than like a fetus in the womb. Tyler doesn't, and I understand that. That's fair. But like overall, she just needs to make that distinction that generally speaking, like that's the way that society values it. And then you have to have a conversation about should society value a fetus or a baby more or less, and that's kind of where you would have to go in that direction.
Plant life, then why are we fine killing plants, Tyler, if we don't value human life different than plant life? If all life is intrinsically valuable, why can we kill plants and feel fine about it? Why are we legally allowed to kill plants? Value does determine
Plants
rights.
aren't humans.
It determines whether or not you're allowed.
She's making
Value doesn't really determine rights. It's just what
she is making a decent point. It's just like very bizarre, but like she's making these points. She's talking about like inherent value from society. Because like at the end of the day, honestly, like think about it this way: when it really comes down like objective value, purely objective value, plants are more valuable than human beings. The world would cease to exist without plants. We would die. All animals would die without plants. But without humans, the world would be fine. In fact, it may even flourish, right? So she's talking about like different values. So if you come from the perspective of, you know, valuing humans over plants, which I do, I think Tyler does as well, her argument actually does make sense. I just don't think that she's able to flush it out well enough.
whatever the dominant life. It's just whatever the dominant. Dude,
What difference?
I can't speak. It's really just whatever the dominant life form just determines what is life, right?
Right. What makes
what has those rights? Like the lion gets to determine what's food and what's not food, what has rights and what doesn't have rights, right? We are just the dominant life form. That is natural.
How do we?
That's completely natural.
How do we determine that, Tyler? What makes us different than plant life if value has nothing to do with it?
Why does it? So even if you were going to go into that argument, what does that have to do?
She
with
has a good
abortion
point on
specifically?
this. She's talking about overall.
The only way that it could matter is if you were somehow going to argue that human beings do not have don't naturally have the right to life.
Boom, baby! You got my argument. I'm saying fetuses don't have intrinsic value, bro. The things that make
I didn't say fetuses. I said human beings.
Well, I'm talking about fetuses.
She wanted that win so bad. She really wanted that. Because you could make that argument that humans don't have intrinsic value, but that's all humans. That's not relegated to specifically fetuses. She just kind of nay-nayed herself. I feel really bad for her because she really needed that win, Tyler. She really needed that win, man.
Okay, what I'm saying is that that's not what I said. So I don't know why you just boomed and you didn't even understand what I said.
I'm saying fetuses have different value of life than human beings, okay? Right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I've heard you.
The
I've
boom,
heard you.
the boom
I'm comparing
was
the value of a fetus between to a plant, because the things that differentiates human life from plant life.
Oh, guys, I forgot. I haven't brought up UBI yet. With a universal basic income, it would actually reduce our necessity to have abortions because the reality is that most abortions happen due to some kind of financial restriction. On top of that, with a UBI being implemented, we would also be able to spread education from an area-by-area basis after the economic infrastructure has been flourishing. You can increase the amount of money that goes into schooling programs, which make people more educated. It would increase employment directly. The reason that poor people have more babies is because they're dumb and unemployed. So we expand intelligence, we expand employment, and all of a sudden you're going to see less abortion. So since you guys wanted me to implement a UBI plug here, there you go. So UBI is actually very much is more of a pro-life argument. How do you guys like that?
And fetuses. That's why value is relevant to this conversation, and I'm upset that you shut down that argument.
Are you talking about the consciousness that you could?
You're certainly upset about it, but that doesn't.
If we talk about disingenuous arguments, address the point I just made, bro. What makes human life different than plant life if it's not value?
That's what I'm saying. Like none of it's irrelevant. You're literally just
shut the hell
your
up,
time
bad
and my
take.
time. It has nothing to do with the argument here of abortion.
Tyler, I'm asking you what makes us different than
Big
plants
poo
if
gang.
it is not value. If value
about?
is irrelevant to this conversation, if value of life is relevant to this conversation, then what makes us different than plants? What makes
It has nothing to do with what makes us different.
pee-pee.
It just has
Big
to do with human
peepees.
beings having the right to life.
Big
Right, but
peepees.
without value, why?
I mean, everything believes it has the right to life, right? So, like,
That's what value
a cow
is,
believes
yeah.
it has. Well, whether you say believes, but in its own sense, believes it has the right to life, right?
Yeah, the cow believes that it has a particular value. Yeah.
Right? Do not all beings believe, or even believe, but
No.
act in a way that they have the right to life?
Yeah.
Embryos don't have brains, so they can't believe
What the
anything.
fuck is she talking about? Oh my
Okay,
god.
so what does that matter?
She could have went
My
into
point
that
is-
and been like, yeah, everybody like every creature has their own subjective value of life as a whole. She could have said that, but instead she dismissed the argument. What the fuck's wrong with her? What are you doing?
If you could, because now you're talking about desire. Because I already told you earlier, if you cannot substantiate someone who doesn't have or even believes that they don't have, that they don't value life, right? When I already brought that up earlier, you couldn't refute that. I told you, what if you don't have? If I believe that I don't have, that life is meaningless and that my life is worthless, do you have the right to kill me?
No. Okay.
That goes
go
into a
back-
question of whether you have the right to kill yourself there, Tyler. Maybe, I don't know.
Yes or no question. Stop dodging my
Maybe.
question. Just answer
That'd
yes
be
or
depressing.
no. Do you?
We've moved past the desire. Or
You know what's so funny? I know I'm going off a tangent, but if you had the right to take your own life in society, we would probably see a better society overall. Because right now, I mean, I guess you could just take your life. It's just not socially acceptable. Because right now, like, shit's fucked. Like, regardless of whether you're conservative or progressive, like, you acknowledge that the middle class is taking a hit. Right? So, like, if people were just like, you know what, I'm out, and just started popping themselves off, all of a sudden they'd be like, all right, we gotta not let everybody kill themselves. We're gonna have to do something to stop that. You know what I mean? Like, that's why it's illegal to kill yourself. But if we stopped falling for it, we just started going, pop, 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 don't do this. I'm fucking making kind of a satirical argument, but it actually is kind of true. But if we did start taking our own lives, all of a sudden the government would be like, well, we got to make sure that the middle class is not doing that anymore. You know, my body, my choice. You know what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden, instead of saying you can't kill yourself, we'd have to create a society that's like, okay, how do we make people happier? All right?
Do you? Just answer my question.
No, don't kill yourself.
If I
No,
do not
don't do
believe
that.
that my life is meaningless, my desire for life is completely out, right? Do you have the right to kill me?
Here is the issue.
If she wanted to, she could say, well, if you're living in my house and you had no desire to live, and the house is her womb, I could kick you out of the house, I guess, and then maybe you die. But then I guess you could just bring that into a whole conversation about adoption of pregnancy and blah, 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 blah,
With
blah,
that
blah.
argument, I mean, when we're
It's
talking
fucking-
about false equivalencies and something not being an appropriate analysis.
I'm just asking you a
So
question.
complex.
I'm trying to answer, bro. I'm explaining to you
Unnecessarily
that desire
complicated.
to not live literally considered a mental disorder. There are too many confounding variables in that example to appropriately equate.
So her argument here could be like there's a difference between not wanting to live and not having the capacity to understand life. That's her argument. I guess it's an okay argument.
That to a fetus, and even
So you can't answer? I'm not even talking about a fetus.
what? Well, then
I'm not talking about a fetus.
there
Brian,
are
you
too many
killed me.
confounding variables because being
Oh my
suicidal
God.
is considered a mental disorder. That's clouding your judgment. That's clouding your desire. So it's not really relevant to this conversation. Like,
First of all, it's not always considered a mental disorder. But second of all, I asked you a very specific question. So I asked you a very specific question that you are refusing to answer. I asked you that if I believe that my life is meaningless, right, and I have no desire to live, right, I don't even have a will to live, right, do you have the right to kill me? I'm asking you a yes or no question.
Tyler, and I'm again not answering that question because it's
Oh my God! You see what I'm talking about? Come on, you can't even answer the question.
relevant to this debate. I'm still waiting for you to answer.
How is that not relevant?
Because, Tyler, like I said,
You're the one who brought that up.
suicidal is a disorder. It's not the same as not having the literal brain structures in place to even be capable of desire. Those are two entirely different things, Tyler. I don't understand why you rip on me for false equivalency and then you try to equate literally not having a brain to being depressed.
So you can't answer?
I just answered it. I'm
So you
telling
can't answer.
Oh my
equivalency.
god.
Okay, you
She's
can't
so
answer. Okay.
upset.
Tyler,
Just because you say it's a false equivalency, just because you can't answer the question.
I don't think that she's absorbing your, and I don't know if you are absorbing her arguments either, but she's not absorbing your arguments, so I don't think that she's like thinking about it so that she could respond.
Doesn't make any
anyway,
sense. But anyway,
prepared to answer.
what else you got?
Are you prepared to answer the question I've been asking you? What allows us to over
Gee.
human beings if it has nothing to do with value? Are you prepared to answer that question? Because you deflected that question several
Say the question. I think I've already answered all your questions, but say that again. You cut out.
Not. What allows us to kill plants over human beings if it has nothing to do with the value of life?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not messing with you. Say it again. You said over human beings has the value to life. The first part.
Why are we allowed to kill plants and human beings if it has nothing to do with the value of life? Because if we admit that we value human life over plant life, then suddenly
Who allows us to do anything?
Ourselves.
You answered my question with a question. Don't get on to me about
No,
it.
It has.
No, but you're in a good spot. She could totally turn that. Be like, yeah, we do as a society. We decide that we're more valuable, and that's why we are okay with killing plants and animals.
It has complete. I'm sorry. I'm not stuttering over my words. It has to do with how I'm going to respond. So yeah. So who gives anyone the right to do anything?
Let me rephrase.
Oh, she's nay-naying herself.
Is dying. Let me rephrase.
She's
What makes it
nay-naying
moral to
herself
kill a
here
plant,
so
or at least
hard.
morally neutral, but not morally neutral to kill a human being. I would argue that it is that we value human life over plant life, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm asking you what you think it is, since you don't think value is relevant to this conversation.
Well, no. Well, hold on. I didn't say that value in any respect, as far as any other species, has to do with anything. I'm talking about strictly when we're talking about human beings.
Right, and I'm saying.
So within human beings, right? I don't believe that or I don't believe that a baby has more or less. Or their value is irrelevant to me because that they are a human being, they still have the right to life, right? When you falsely compare that to an animal or falsely compare it to a plant, I don't care about. I don't believe that they are more valuable, or I do believe that they are less valuable than human beings.
Right.
Well, but also when you talk about value, though, then you have to talk about, well, plants, they sustain human life, so then you have to get into that whole debate. But still, yeah, I believe that animals are less valuable, quote unquote, valuable than people, but that has nothing to do with my argument that when we're talking specifically about human beings, their value is irrelevant to me because I view them the same. Unless, of course, you give up your right to life or forfeit your right to life. Where if you, quote, break into my home or you assault me or you try to kill me, then obviously you are forfeiting your right to life.
Right. So what I'm pointing out though is that the reason
I guess she could say like, yeah, but the baby's like is forcing themselves into the body. Well, yeah, no, that's only in the case of like a rape.
The reason that we differentiate right to life between human beings and plants is because of value. And
I agree
as
with that. You
stated,
pop them
No,
off.
agree. I
Come to my
completely
house,
agree. I agree
give him a pop
as
shot.
you stated, you do value baby life over fetus life, but you just claim that that's irrelevant to the argument, and I'm pointing out that that's not irrelevant.
No.
That's true.
I value all human beings, right? I value them the same, or not so much that I value. Let me roll back what I'm saying. It's not so much that I value them the same. It's more so that their value is irrelevant when we are speaking on the right to life. That's what I'm saying.
You don't necessarily value them the same, but the value of those things are irrelevant.
Did I say the R word?
That
That sucks.
and I'm pointing out that
for strictly human beings has nothing to do with plants, has nothing to do with other species.
Tyler's the only defining variable in assessing anything's right to life is value. So if you view an embryo and a baby differently, value-wise, then that is an argument for abortion. You know what I mean? If you're saying
no, it isn't.
Yes,
I would say he doesn't know.
No, it isn't. And let me tell you why it's not. Can I tell you why it's not?
Got on here and was like, you know what?
I'm answering.
I don't think value matters at all. We shouldn't be allowed to kill plants. Like, you understand why you're just like completely avoiding the reality of this argument, right? Because you think
No, that's not.
Oh,
you think
Joe
value
Rogan died.
matters in terms of comparing plant life to human life. But then when we get into the argument about human life,
I'm saying that we are the dominant life form, and that is what it is. We determine what other species are valuable or less valuable to us. However, we as people also understand that human beings have the same, or if you can believe that it has the same value, or you can believe that it doesn't have the same value, that's really irrelevant to the case that they all have the right to life, right? But anyway,
I don't know why you keep saying value doesn't necessarily matter, though. It's bizarre because you could just be like, yeah, like subjectively, like, yeah, humans are more valuable than plants based on our perspectives, but like a fetus is a potential human, so it has the same value as a baby. You could make that argument just fine when talking about value.
In your thing that you were breaking down, you were saying that it's I don't know, morally inconsistent or whatever you were saying when you're talking about, oh well. You're talking about a fetus versus an embryo or whatever, and we've already discussed that. Again, that you're talking about moral subjectivity, right? I'm telling you that just because if I view your life less than I view my brother's life or less than I view my mother's life, that does not mean that I still have the right to take yours. Do you understand that? If you do understand that, then every time you keep trying to go back to this contention, because I really feel like you think it's like a good thing to say, but you don't understand that I'm refuting it.
Tyler, I understand exactly what's going on. And what I'm pointing out is that in a scenario where you have no biases, you don't know any of the people involved, you easily chose the mother's life over the fetus's life. But then when choosing between saving a mother and a baby, you could not make that choice. And I'm saying that it is because you value baby life over fetal life, which you said that you value, but you think that's irrelevant to the conversation. And I am emphasizing to you that it's not irrelevant.
But again, Victoria, I already explained that.
Tyler, I'm speaking. I've let you ramble and
she's so upset right now.
Things, like waiting for you to finish speaking so I could get my turn.
Go ahead.
So,
go ahead.
My point to you is that
how much time is left? Tyler,
I don't know. I'm sure
you can see if you tap on live, it tells you how long you've been live.
Okay. We've been live for 100 minutes, so we're past time. But
what the fuck? Yeah. I thought it cut off at like 60 minutes.
No, time flies when you're having fun, you know.
Oh, okay. Well, my personal live's cut off at 60 minutes. Maybe you're just special. But go ahead.
Yeah, I've got.
Maybe they're trying to censor you.
I don't know.
It's her female privilege.
But back to what I was saying. God, what was I saying? So basically, you immediately say that value is irrelevant to the conversation. It's not. Value is what allows us to not feel bad about killing animals or killing plants, but like does make us feel bad about killing human beings because we value that life differently. And so I'm at the very least trying to paint the picture for you that you, at your core belief, do not view abortion in the same way that you view killing a baby, a newborn baby. Because if you did, that scenario would have been like equally as difficult. So even if you believe that abortion,
no, that's not. That is such a straw man, bro. It's just like one logical fallacy after another.
It's not a logical fallacy. Even if you believe that abortion is murder, I'm just pointing out that you are a lot more comfortable with abortion than killing illegal. A baby. Is that not fair to say? Because we watched it.
Are you gonna let me speak?
I can speak.
I can speak?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So as I've said, at this point, I can't refute this past this because this is so circular. So another one of your logical fallacies. So you keep bringing up, you're saying that Tyler, look, you value a fetus more than a woman, or no, I think you said the opposite. You're saying that Tyler, you value a mother more than a fetus. Is that what you're saying so far? Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you're saying, Tyler, you value this mother more than this fetus. What I'm telling you is that would only be an argument against me if I came on here saying that they all have equal value. I never said that. I said that they have the equal right to life. That is what you are not understanding, right? So when you say that, Tyler, if I put you in this situation where you are forced to make this decision, right? That I have to choose between one or the other. Neither of them would be immoral because I am forced with that decision, right? I would say it would be either, or I would argue it would be equally moral or immoral, right? So you are forced with that decision, right? That has nothing to do with their right to life, right?
Well, you failed to tell me then what gives, or why just anything human has the right to life, right? You feel, because if we value everything differently, but we say everything human has the right to life, then that is saying like sperm has the right to life, eggs have the right to life. You failed to tell me why you believe an embryo has a right to life over those.
She kind
even
of,
if it's valued differently than a new.
She kind of has an argument here, but she's not really putting it out in a good way.
Born baby. You failed to provide a reasoning why.
Well, I haven't.
That's just your.
I haven't failed to do that.
Well, why?
I haven't failed to do that.
Why does any?
So more false equivalent.
Because she's arguing cutoff points, and but she's not understanding that she's arguing cutoff points, so she's not elaborating on that. It's a very good argument, though.
You're comparing a gamete to a human embryonic organism.
You value, because we value them differently. It's different because we value them differently, Tyler. So I'm
Victoria, you just got on me for interrupting you. Are you not going to let me speak?
Well, I'm just very confused as to your argument.
It's like it's okay if you interrupt, but it's not okay if I do.
Oh
We've
my
both been interrupting
goodness.
each other, but I'm just saying after one of your long-winded spiels, I would like to be able to get more than a sentence in.
As if you also didn't have long-winded spiels.
Okay. Well, I'm asking you why. I'm literally just asking you because if we value eggs and sperm.
But you're false. Again. Well, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but it's a false equivalency. You're saying you're trying to compare. Again, you are trying to compare either.
We value an embryo. We value sperm and egg differently than we value embryos. We value embryos differently than we value newborn babies. Value is what determines right to life. So I'm confused. If value of anything human does...
Value is not what determines right to life.
Right. So what differentiates sperm and egg versus an embryo other than the fact that it is an embryo? Why does an embryo have a right to life?
They aren't the same. You're comparing it. You are comparing a gamete to an embryo. Do you know the difference?
DNA. They both have human DNA. So why...
It doesn't matter if it's human DNA. I've already talked to you about that. That's like saying that skin cells and hair cells are the same.
I mean, she could simply say that, like, hey, it's earlier in the development cycle, so that makes it less valuable. I mean, that could be her whole argument, and then, like, it makes sense, but she's not really making that argument. I think she's trying to, though.
It's not. Those are somatic cells. Those are somatic cells that make up the whole.
Why does an embryo have more of a right to life, Tyler? Why
it doesn't. More than a right to life to what?
Why does an embryo have more of a right to life than any human cells? You said it was just...
Then sperm cells? What happens to sperm cells if they're left alone?
Right. What happens to an embryo?
I'm asking you a question. What happens to sperm cells if they're left alone? Okay. What happens to an embryo? What happens to an embryo if it is left alone?
In a petri dish, when it's left alone in a petri dish, Tyler?
No, that's not even where it is. You're talking about if you take it out of the mother?
Tyler, we were talking about earlier.
Or if you grow it, or if you grow it, or if you clone it? Is that what you're talking about?
IVF embryos that are discarded. I'm just pointing out that sperm without...
But you're falsely comparing two things. You're talking about abortion. You're talking about an embryo, right?
I'm just going to keep going. Sperm without a womb dies. Embryos without a womb dies. So what makes embryos have a right to life more than sperm and egg? What is it? If it's not value, because I think it's value. Personally, I would not view jacking off as an abortion. Okay, I don't think that they're the same.
Oh my God, I know you're not trying to use that as an argument.
I'm not. I'm explaining how value works, bro. This is literally what we, as human beings, how we assess what has a right to life has everything to do with value. And for you to just
she has an okay argument here.
That aspect of this argument,
I think at this point she's just struggling to kind of like put it together. I think that if she reflected on, because like at the end of the day, regardless of who you think won, you have to. We understand that Tyler is much better at having these conversations, and he's heard all this before, so he's much more. It's much easier for him to have the conversation again. But for her, I think this is probably the first time she's really heard conversation, like an argument like this. And so like maybe if she digested it for a little bit, she could probably come back a little bit stronger. But she's just simply not like educated enough on his argument to really do much here.
Even pro-lifers would say is ridiculous. And pro-lifers have been saying that in the chat. You have to acknowledge that value plays a very large role in right to life. So what gives an embryo the right to life more than a sperm or an egg cell if it has nothing to do with value?
Yeah, she's right. Yeah, that's the value that we place on it. It's like a cutoff point.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Okay. So as I've stated, right, because an embryonic human organism is its own entity, right, completely separate from you or I, or you or your husband, or whoever, whatever you want to say, right? It's completely separate,
It is
right?
separate.
What is? I'm sorry.
Well, sperm is just it's a separate. You know,
A sperm cell is no, it's not the same thing, because a sperm cell is 100% me. It's nothing. It's
no,
it's
actually,
100% me.
has different variations of your. That's why if it was 100% you and my egg cell was 100% me, then every baby born by two people would be identical. It has.
Fuck are we
different
talking
variations.
about?
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. And if I came across that way, then I miscommunicated that. Okay. What I'm saying is that a sperm cell, right, is just it's my DNA, right?
Right.
It's not its own unique embryonic organism, is it?
No.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So we understand that.
So
Okay. So what I'm saying is that you are comparing that. You are trying to compare.
All she has to say, like, yeah, you're right. That's why sperm has and an egg individually have less value than like the two combined. And then that would be why, you know, a fetus or an embryo has less value than a fetus, and that's why a fetus is less value than a baby. But then it gets tricky because now like a baby has more value than like a mother, and it's like, or rather than like an adult, and it gets all complicated.
Gamete to an embryonic organism.
Right.
It is not comparable.
It's really just societal assignments
what I'm saying
of
is that
value.
it is not comparable. Victoria, stop interrupting me. What I'm saying is that it is not comparable. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You keep trying to make
I
it
think they should just make a baby, yeah.
so.
If
You keep
value
saying
has
that
nothing to do with it, Tyler. Why? Why is it not comparable if value has nothing to do with it? Why?
because it's not the same. I keep telling you that they're
It's
not the
almost
same
so,
thing. You
Grace.
agree with me
Yeah.
every time.
Tyler, I would say a baby is not the same.
You're saying why to
Because
something that has nothing to do with this.
I'm just explaining why, and I'm asking why an embryo has more of a right to life than gamete cells if it has nothing to do with value, okay? Because both would die if not left in a womb. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because it's a unique organism of DNA, that's still not answering why. Why does that give it?
Even when the sperm cell, even when this, yeah, but
value.
it's not the same. So even when the sperm cell is traveling inside of you, it doesn't make it its own unique embryonic organism. It's only when it attaches and you know, to your eggs and whatever does it form a new complete person. That is when a new person is formed. It is not a person when you are for a sperm cell or your eggs. Those are not persons. They do not develop into persons until they form that new unique being.
And I'm asking why that makes that embryo a valuable form of human life. If it's,
Dude, you are just like, this is legitimately circular.
I'm just asking why it makes it a valuable form of human life if it doesn't have any of the defining characteristics of humanity that separate us from plants. That's what I'm asking. All of the things.
Jesus. I get maybe they did need a moderator just to stay on one topic and just like, okay, we're done with this topic, we're not going back, kind of a thing.
Oh God, do I have to go through it again? Are you going to ask
Lord.
me for the Merriam-Webster Dictionary of Consciousness?
No, what defining character? Are you talking about like the
Consciousness,
7 characteristics of life?
Consciousness, subjective.
I can't speed it up. It's
and,
I can do this.
Yeah.
Like that.
I've already debunked what you said there. Because
I can't speed it up. I wish I had it on YouTube.
You already like conceded that it has nothing.
But you
to
could
do with
speed
it.
it up when you watch my YouTube
separate
video.
us from plant life.
You couldn't even define
what
consciousness.
What makes okay, fucking Tyler, define where's the hypothalamus in the brain? You want to talk about cognitive development?
But what I'm saying is that I'm not using that as an argument, so I don't need to.
All right, Tyler.
You're the one using it. You're the one if you are using something as an argument.
Give me the definition of give me the exact definition of abortion without looking it up. You know what I'm saying? Like this whole like.
So an abortion is basically when just like a baby just dies. That's pretty much it. Or like a fetus dies. Like a fucking miscarriage is an abortion, just so you know.
Oh,
but he's also giving you the ability to look it up. So that's the problem. Because you could literally just he's like, hey, look it up for me, and you're like, no, and like you don't have he doesn't have to give you he doesn't have to not look it up, but it's the deliberate termination of a human pregnancy most often performed for 20. Oh, they must have redefined it. Why did I think a miscarriage was part of it? For some reason, like that must have been like an older definition that I read. But you get my point. He could still look it up.
It's just like it doesn't make sense. We didn't sit around memorizing.
So there are certain things that we. But here's what I'm saying. There are certain things that we agree on. This is why I'm saying that I feel like you have no idea what you're doing, because you are now trying to compare this to, okay, if we agree on something, then we have to define it. Well, we both agree on what abortion is, right? We understand what abortion is.
Oh yeah, it's considered a miscarriage is considered a spontaneous abortion. I mean, whatever. I mean, this.
I'm telling you that I'm asking you I'm asking you. It's the termination. Abortion is just the
Every time I jerk off, that's a spontaneous abortion too. Am I right, guys?
termination of a pregnancy, right? So anyway,
most often performed when? That's a part of the definition. Most often performed when?
Dude.
Oh, do you not know the definition of abortion?
No,
well,
no, that's not what. That's not what I'm saying.
Oh,
no,
I don't
that's not what I'm
understand.
saying.
Why does she think that she got him on that?
You don't know the word for
You haven't invalidated anything. I'm sad. I'm sad because of this, of what you're saying.
Tyler. I've seen you do it. You literally debated a 16-year-old girl until she cried, just going, "What's the exact definition of a fetus? What's the exact definition?" That doesn't.
First of all, that's a lie. She was 18 years old.
She was in high school. You were 39.
Are you not 8? First of all, I'm not 39.
I was like 30.
I'm 30. Second, can you not be 18 in high school?
Damn, she's just trying to throw shade now. Jesus. Yo, this girl lost, boy.
What does that have to do with anything?
Because you said she was 16. You're lying. You are a liar. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not a liar. Sorry.
You are disingenuous. You are a liar.
He does seem a little younger. Yeah.
Tyler, the point is that in multiple debates of yours, you've just screamed at people asking them to.
Oh, is that what it is? Her only access is her internet's a phone. Well, that's unfortunate for her.
We're talking about multiple debates. We're talking about this one again. This is now it's more red herring. All you are is logical fallacy on top of logical fallacy on top of logical fallacy.
No,
and then
they're just going to be mean
when
to
you are
each
backed
other.
into a corner, and when someone keeps refuting what you are saying, keeps debunking what you're saying, you just keep trying to bring it back. I don't know if it's because all of your people are in these comments and they're just hyping you up, and you feel like you can do that, but you're not.
One time you've debunked me. One time, please. One time you've debunked me.
What's consciousness?
Tyler, okay, when are abortions?
You can't even answer. You can't even answer.
This is a shit show. It's almost over.
Do you understand?
It doesn't matter.
I think they're most often performed before the first 12 weeks, right?
It doesn't matter when most abortions are performed, because I believe that's not a logical fallacy, because I'm telling you it should be illegal from conception. I'm saying that all of them should be illegal.
First 12 to 13
so that has nothing to do with what I'm saying.
Tyler, you love that.
Oh my goodness. No, Victoria.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me tell you how this started. No, let me tell you how this started.
The problem is that, like, I don't... it's just an error in reasoning, but like I don't understand. Like she's just going ballistic now because he asked her to define a word, and now she's just like define every word, and it's like, well, it's not really relevant. It doesn't really matter per se when abortions happen. If his arguments we just shouldn't have abortions, you understand?
So this started off kind of debatey in the beginning, and then it kind of went okay, like somewhere like in the middle, to where we kind of had like a little bit more respect in the middle, and then during the end, then you just get right back to your same bullshit that you had before, dude. Come on, dude. At this point, okay, so at this point, Victoria, can you agree? At this point, Victoria, can you agree that this argument is going nowhere?
Tyler.
It is going nowhere. Hopefully you guys can get Tyler back in here. I'd like to have a conversation with him about this. You can join in, by the way, Ryan, if you'd like to.
If you can't give me...
At this point,
another 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to grab something from the fridge.
At this point, do you understand that this is no longer, like, there's no benefit? There's not a benefit to you. There's not a benefit to myself. Is there a benefit to you or a benefit to myself?
Yes.
Yes or no?
I'm curious. You said to me that if you cannot...
I couldn't care less what you're curious about. I'm asking, in the scope of this debate,
if you cannot define
in the scope of this debate,
just tell me what a logical fallacy is, Tyler. Unless you're fine getting dunked on and debunked, tell me what a logical fallacy is. Definition.
I have to finish the video. I have to finish the video.
Would you like to define it word for word for me?
I'm asking if you know what it means.
I know what a red herring is, Tyler, and I'm pointing out.
If you know what it means,
it's dried smoked meat.
Are you saying that you didn't commit a red herring?
Tyler, it amazes me how you cannot see when I am demonstrating for you something you did to me. We will roll back the tapes.
Got dunked
you yelled at me asking.
You see how she's using basketball slang intentionally with Tyler because she's a racist.
For a definition of a term I used, and when I could not give it to you, you said that my argument was invalid.
Because you were using it as an argument.
Define dunked on.
If you were using this as
Tyler, I will every time.
Oh, give me a little. I just want to get through this and take a piss and go through my alerts, and I'll invite you on. Like maybe I don't know. Hopefully by 4.
What I'm saying here, bro.
Did you or did you not commit red herrings? Did you or did you not commit non sequiturs?
When, Tyler? Well, I mean, do you genuinely think that asking me to define a term and me defining it in terms of how?
No, I'm asking you if you understand. I'm asking you I'm asking you if you understand that if you committed logical fallacies or not. Do you understand that if you committed like a red herring or not?
Do you think you committed red herrings and logical fallacies? Like what?
No, do you believe? Okay, so do you believe that I committed a red herring?
I don't believe that I did. Like,
okay, so then why are you bringing it up? Literally, like, I feel like you just talk just to talk. And you're just continuing this debate because you just want to keep talking.
Okay.
Right, so that's basically what it is. So again, so Victoria, so obviously, I got clips to upload, right? So obviously this debate is going nowhere as of this point. Now it's kind of just a shouting match, right? So at this point, I want to say that, hey, I appreciate you, and I also, just to be clear, and tell me if I'm wrong or not. Did we or did we not agree to this being about an hour?
I mean, yeah, you can dip if you don't.
Okay. No. Did we talk about that? And actually, I think you were the one who said that after that, it kind of like is no point, right?
I mean, you're welcome to leave.
Okay. No, yeah, absolutely. So that's what I'm saying.
Her mic's cutting out, but she's trying to spin it as like, oh, if you leave, you're the one who lost.
I think that you and I have both got out everything that we need to say, right? I want to appreciate you for inviting me on here. And yeah, you definitely take care of yourself, Victoria.
Okay, Tyler. Thank you. Bye. You can leave. I'm gonna stay on. Okay, y'all. What were y'all's thoughts?
You kind of got
Is it just me? I don't think I lost. I know people don't like win debates, but like,
you so won.
Especially like, do y'all think that was an I gotcha moment? The whole like, oh, I can't like you can't give me the dictionary definition of consciousness. I feel like that's so irrelevant to an argument.
All you did was fucking scream like a little baby.
This is rough, girl. You kind of screamed the whole time.
Literally.
I'm pro-choice. I am pro-choice. I'm going to have a conversation with Tyler in like the next half an hour about this. And I'm telling you that from a debate perspective, you lost. You lost, man. You got shit on. And I think it's because you weren't educated on his perspective as well as he was educated on yours. But, you know.
Oh, okay, so you're saying that, like, women could just, like, go out and get involuntarily impregnated. And someone in the comments go, you only use emotion to argue, Victoria. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Literally.
Rape is something that happened.
Yeah.
Define happened.
I can't. What a fucking dumbass.
Define a dumbass. Am I right or what?
This is what happens to men when you've been rejected.
Oh, this is it, guys. He's a man. Define a man.
God, that was insane, y'all.
Define insane, girl.
This is why I'm excited for my debate with Ben, because while I think
define Ben,
debater, it's like people who aren't very well versed in what they're talking about or don't really understand their views are even harder to argue with. I feel like.
I think we're gonna leave the video off of that last point that she made. I think that was a very good point that she had made right there. So maybe we can listen to it again. Guys, to all my Patreons, and a special shout out to my Papa XL Patreons. Without all you guys, I would just be some fat dude screaming into a microphone. So thank you so much, guys. Mwah, I love you all. I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.